I'd like to call to order the regular meeting, November 13, 2017. Please join Councilmember Loretano in the Pledge of Allegiance and stay standing for the invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Jesus said there is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. Let us give our veterans special thanks for their service this day after Veterans Weekend. Let us pray to protect them and their families home and abroad. Let us pray for our country, state, and city and those that serve and protect us at home. Let us pray for our leaders that they may make wisdom and wise decisions and have foresight to make those wise decisions that allow us to live in peace and prosper. Let us be thankful for all that we have been given. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Councilmember Loretano. Very nicely done. All right, everyone is present. We have one communication item tonight. We will recognize, and this is always so pleasant, we will be recognizing the volunteers who recently completed the Community Emergency Response Team, which is what we call Cert training. Our emergency manager, Julie Sermopoulos. Are you Greek?
I'm Irish. My husband's
is your
Greek.
husband Greek?
Sermopoulos.
Yeah, okay. My dad had a partner in his restaurant by that, similar to that name, so, all right. On with the meeting, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Lord, members of the council. The Community Emergency Response Team CERT program educates volunteers about disaster preparedness for the hazards that may impact their area and trains them in basic disaster response skills such as fire safety, light search and rescue, team organization, and disaster medical operations. CERT offers a consistent nationwide approach to volunteer training and organization that professional responders can rely on during disaster situations, which allows them to focus on more complex tasks. Through CERT, the capabilities to prepare for, respond to, and recover from disasters is built in and enhanced. This year, the City of Goodyear went through its rosters, and we refreshed our membership with new contact information and reconfirmed continued commitment. I am happy to say that with tonight's additional 19 graduates, we now have 74 active CERT members within the community. Without any further delay, I'd like to read into the record the names of the 19 newest members who graduated in October, and I'm going to ask the 3 that I know who are here if they would please come forward to be recognized. Alida Ojeda, Pastora Edna Rojas, Jim Sermanic. That's correct. Eferasto Parapoli.
Even the first part.
Dipota. Blanca Uvaria. In addition to those that were here, Jennifer Calavini, Kelly Comstock-Snell, Barbara Downey, James Downey, Greg Howard, Robert Garcia Jr., Carlotta Knox, Frank Minicellio, Elizabeth Munoz, Donovan Park, Sharon Rende, Michael Sanders, Richard Siebert, and Todd Snell also completed the course. So if you would join me in thanking them.
You can stay right there because I'm sure that the council has something they'd like to say. Who would like to start?
Sure.
Councilman Osborne.
Thank you so much for stepping up. You know, we always feel so good when we see all the volunteers of our city that want to do good things, but it's even more exciting when we know in disaster times that that's what you're there for, and that's an even better way to sleep at night, knowing that we have great police, we have great fire, and we have great citizens that want to volunteer during those times. Thanks.
Councilman Loretano.
I'm going to echo this to thank you, because I know it's a long time commitment, and it takes a lot of hard work and everything, and the training and everything. So I do thank you for taking that time to help our city and our citizens make it a better place. And like what Councilmember Osborne said, obviously, if there's an emergency, it's great to know we have so many citizens that are prepared to step in and help, because first responders can't be everywhere at all the time. So we really count on our citizens, and thank you too. That we really do thank that you've taken the time to do that and appreciate it.
Yeah, I will also echo what everybody else is saying here as well. So thank you so much for the time commitment and being engaged in the emergency response program with the city. And like you said, also just knowing that we have people that can step up and help out the community in the event that a disaster or something like that might happen. So thank you so much.
Vice Mayor?
Oh, welcome to the team. I'm a Cert. Yay. And what's so interesting is that during the Hurricane Harvey and all of the other hurricanes, I always look at the news and I can see where the first responders mark the buildings. And I have to remember, oh, yes, I know what that means. So, but thank you so much. It's just a wonderful opportunity for you to be such a great partner with the city. And we know that you are going to help wherever you are. I don't know if you carry your backpack in your car. I used to. I don't anymore. But I have my hard hat in the car in case I'm needed. You never know where it'll happen. But thank you so much. And it's wonderful to know we have 74 of us. I don't know when I took it, but it was long before I was ever on council, and it was the best time. We loved it.
Councilman Pizzillo?
It's not a whole lot to add, except, again, I appreciate you stepping up. And, again, that's what makes this community great, our citizens stepping up when needed be. So, again, bottom of the heart, thank you very much.
Councilman Stipp?
Yeah, last but not least, right? I think it's really important we talk about the numbers of, 74 CERT team members and how incredibly important that will be. We hope that we never need to put our skills to work, but it is comforting to know that you'll be able to help yourselves and then help your neighbors, and with that, we'll recover much faster. So thank you very much.
Mayor, if I may introduce the last gentleman who walked in, Richard Wallace, who is an EMT during the day and CERT member Goodyear at night.
Oh, great.
Thank you. You didn't get your clap. You want to clap.
Thank you.
Well, and I see he brought his entire family tonight, so
Oh, great.
that's really great. Thank you so much.
Thank you again.
Can we take a picture?
Oh, yes, a picture needs to be taken, so if you'll come up to round the curve. Don't you think? It still works there?
Yeah.
Oh, shucks.
Boost her up. Don't worry
You know
about
what I could do? No, that trash can's too tall. I had a
No, you'll fall off.
spread out a little bit. Yeah, but we have EMTs here.
Yeah, well, that's true, but you don't want to be, you don't want to show your ankle.
No, you're right. I don't want to be the one.
You don't want to be like.
Now is the time for citizens who would like to address the City Council on a non-agenda item within the jurisdiction of the Goodyear City Council. And I understand we do have some cards, and before you read the name, let me just give some instructions, okay?
Mayor, they're actually for the agenda items.
Oh, well, good. All right, then you go ahead. You've got the floor.
This is now for the non-agenda items.
Oh, okay.
And we don't have any speaker cards for this particular
All right.
time.
So wait, is that what
No,
you're saying?
Yeah, we'll do them when the item
Okay,
comes up.
I misunderstood you then. So it's for the next time around, next to the business section? All right, thank you very much. Okay, then we'll go to the consent agenda. Will the city clerk please read the minutes? Excuse me, please read the consent agenda item 6.1 to 6.3 by title only, please.
6.1, approve draft minutes of a special meeting held on October 16, 2017, and a regular meeting held on October 23, 2017. 6.2, accept the federal fiscal year 2017 Arizona Department of Homeland Security Grant Program Award in the amount of $53,820 for the Goodyear Fire 2017 Urban Area Security Initiative Sustainment and Technology Update, and authorize the city manager or designee to execute all documents related to the grant award and authorize a budget transfer to allow for the expenditure of the grant. 6.3, adopt resolution number 17-1838, authorizing the release and relinquishment of a public utility easement located in Lot 19 of the Estrella Parcel 8 subdivision.
Thank you. Does anyone from the public wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Does anyone in the council wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? All right, then could I have a motion and a second, please?
So moved.
Second.
Heard a motion by Councilman Osborne and a second by Councilman Laura Tano. Roll call vote, please.
Vice Mayor Campbell?
Aye.
Councilmember Osborne?
Aye.
Councilmember Pizzillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Loretano?
Aye.
Councilmember Stipp?
Aye.
Councilmember Hampton?
Aye.
Mayor Lord?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right, we're on to the business section. I'd like to remind council to refrain from asking questions until the staff presentations are complete and there is a motion on the table. 7.1, the first item on business, to consider approving appointments to the Fire and Police Public Safety Personnel Boards. Darcy McCracken, City Clerk, will present. Darcy?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Per Arizona Revised Statute 38-847A1, in addition to the mayor's designee, the local board consists of 2 members selected by secret ballot and 2 citizens. The request tonight is to reappoint Jay Mathias as a citizen representative to the Fire and Police Public Safety Personnel Retirement Board for a 4-year term ending October 28, 2021, and also to reappoint Joe Hernandez as the fire representative to the Fire Public Safety Personnel Retirement Board for a 4-year term ending October 28, 2021. Mr. Mathias submitted an application which was reviewed by the City Council Subcommittee for Boards, Commissions, and Committees. The subcommittee conducted interviews and selected Mr. Mathias for reappointment. The fire department held an election by secret ballot at which there were 87 members qualified to vote, and 53 members submitted ballots. Mr. Hernandez received 51 ballots. Mr. Hernandez has served on the board since 2007. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Are there any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Can I have a motion and a second to approve 1, the reappointment of Jay Mathias as the citizen representative to the Fire and Police Public Safety Personnel Retirement Boards for a 4-year term ending October 28, 2021. And number 2, reappoint Joe Hernandez as the fire representative to the Fire Public Safety Personnel Retirement Board for a 4-year term ending October 28, 2021. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I heard a motion by Councilman Hampton and a second by Councilman Stipp. Open for council discussion. Councilman Stipp.
Mayor, as chair of both the police and the fire pension boards, I can certainly speak to Mr. Mathias's tenure with the board and his continued contribution. So I appreciate the subcommittee reappointing him. As far as Mr. Hernandez, I didn't know Joe's dad was part of it. Mr. Hernandez. So Joe also long tenure on the committee. Both contribute really spectacularly to our efforts. So I again appreciate that as well.
Great. All right, let's vote for that. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Now, the city clerk will administer the oath of loyalty.
Will Mr. Mathias and Mr. Hernandez please come forward? I understand Mr. Mathias isn't here. We'll administer the oath at the first meeting. Okay, raise your right hand and state after her.
I, Joe Hernandez, do solemnly affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution and laws of the state of Arizona. I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and defend them against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of Fire Public Safety Personnel Retirement Board according to the best of my abilities. So do I affirm.
All right, I'm going to open the public hearing, and Alex Latinsky, Planner 2, will be presenting. I guess I should tell you that this is the next item of business, is the public hearing to consider zoning ordinance text amendment in zoning districts. And I saw Christopher Baker is before me, so I could tell by the color of your hair.
Well, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that.
I knew that.
If you need to look a little closer, it's okay, too. So, Mayor, Council, thank you for the opportunity coming before you this evening. My purpose here is just merely to set the table for Alex and Katie's presentation. They're going to walk you through the proposed amendment. And so we're really excited to be here tonight to have this discussion with you. This is the culmination of about 8 months or so worth of work and ideas, and is a very exciting opportunity that, that we're delighted to present to you. Your development services staff really does take into heart and works very diligently every day at implementing this council's strategic direction. And along those lines, we work diligently to streamline our processes, ensure quality neighborhoods and safety of our residents, listen to our customers, work in collaboration with other departments and our private sector stakeholders to increase our population base, and also be business friendly. And we take those things very seriously and work diligently, and those reverberate throughout our mind as we review projects, as we come up with processes, and as we evaluate our current business practices as well. And I know, if I may have Elmo for a second, you know, the development continuum of our friends in engineering and economic development, I mean, we put this vision and mission statement together about a year and a half ago now. And we also think that the presentation you're going to have tonight really touches on several of these elements. Responding to evolving market demands, initiating collaborative solutions with our customers and internally, valuing customer partnerships, and empowering our team members and colleagues to come up with solutions to help make us a better city. So we think we're on point with not only the council's strategic direction, but what we have said as staff is what we want to achieve. One important thing I know that the council has heard before is that quality housing growth is the base of everything that the city would like to achieve. We need additional population. We need an increasing tax base. Those things yield the retail and entertainment uses and projects that we all desire to have. It supplements and supports job growth, which we all desire to have more people working in the community, which then affords us the ability to deliver those other things that we all desire to have as well, additional recreation amenities and things of that nature. So realizing that population growth and housing growth is really an important foundation of everything that we want to achieve. In late 2016, Michelle Laurie and I met with the Home Builders Association in order to understand about any potential barriers that may be perceived about Goodyear. What is preventing, or what is the perception that the Home Builders Association and their customers and clients had about Goodyear? Were we on the mark? Were we off the mark? What's going on? What's the perception of our great city with these people that make the investments in our community? As a result of those discussions, we learned that market preferences have shifted over time, and that there was a perception that lot sizes in Goodyear was an obstacle, was a barrier to moving development forward and increasing that volume of residential development. So upon research, staff learned that smaller lots are in fact routinely approved by the city. It's just that they go through a different process. They go through that PAD process, which we know can be very laborious. And you've seen me do this before, where we have a couple of examples of PAD documents. You know, one is about the size of a phone book, and it makes it very challenging, very costly to administer, very challenging because we don't know what the standards are in here. And just simple questions that a citizen may ask become a research project. You know, how close can I build my casita to my property line? Well, you know, where do you live? And blah, blah, blah. So, you know, it turns things into somewhat into a cumbersome process. So because of that, And as you all know, we are an organization of continuous improvement. We asked ourselves, how can the city consider and allow small lots that meet market preferences, that don't have to go through a 6 or 9 month approval process like these documents do, but at the same time ensure quality neighborhoods are built that meets or exceeds the demands and expectations of the council and our citizenry. And we researched and concluded that proposing new residential zoning districts and corresponding development standards would be the appropriate path forward. We estimate that as a result, if this council should support the proposal, we would be able to shave 3 to 4 months off the approval process for zoning, while we're still ensuring quality neighborhoods are built and the safety of our citizens is maintained. This facilitates homes to be constructed at a more efficient pace, which accelerates our population base, which then goes back to what I said earlier in terms of supporting and creating additional demand for retail and entertainment type uses. So it became apparent to staff that we needed to better understand what consumer preferences are, because that's what we kept hearing from our customers, is that lot sizes in Goodyear were too large. So with the help of our stakeholders, such as Bill Olson and Pete Tyke at Newland, we were able to meet with their help and assistance with Nate Nathan and Associates in June of 2017. Nate Nathan and his team came to the city, and we had a very vigorous and enlightening discussion for about almost 2 hours. And he walked us through what successful communities provide in today's marketplace, what is current market demand, what consumers are desiring, and also helped enlighten us on the challenges of mortgage financing. Where is that financial sweet spot that is creates the biggest opportunity for home buyers? So armed with that knowledge and where the housing market is headed and the sweet spot that financially builders are trying to get to, we began work on the amendment that's before you tonight. We presented the concept of creating these new residential districts and the corresponding standards and having a menu of selections that the development community can choose from. Again, what we want is quality neighborhoods that are not monotonous. So we have very specific standards, but how those are implemented is left up to the creativity of the individual projects. And we really focused on what the impacts of smaller lots would be to the streetscape. Again, are the houses very close to the street? How big is the garage door? What can we do to mitigate that? Concrete, paving, textures, things of that nature. We are not proposing, as Alex and Katie will get into, any revisions to the design standards for individual homes. We focused on what is the standard for the community and are not proposing any changes to the current design standards. So as you know, we came before the council in a work session on July 10th in order to seek some policy direction. And as a result of that conversation, what we heard from the council as a whole was there was support, but to be sure that we focus on quality and safety. Council also asked us to work with the Planning Commission in order to ensure that they are also in agreement and get any input and ideas that they have as well. And we did that in August of 2017. As the result of that work session is that the Planning Commission was very supportive of the project and the concept as well. So we continued to work with our customers and stakeholders to garner input and ideas. We discussed it at some of our quarterly development meetings, and also provided drafts. It was on the website and had a lot of dialogue with several of our stakeholder organizations and stakeholder developers. We appreciate what the Home Builder Association did in providing input and helping us craft an ordinance, a proposed ordinance to you that not only meets the policy direction that the council provided to us in July of 2017, but also meets the needs of the building community. We do not see those goals as mutually exclusive. Actually, they're one and the same, frankly. Staff brought the proposed amendment to the Planning Commission for a vote on November 8th, and the Commission unanimously recommended approval to you. And as you know, due to the large nature of this text amendment change, we did send the the proposed ordinance to you last Monday, so you had some opportunity and some time to digest the materials. And so that's where we are. And tonight, Katie and Alex are going to walk you through, do a short presentation to walk you through some of the particulars of the proposal. And then tonight, the council has a couple of options. One, you could vote on the amendment, either positively or negatively, or change it tonight. Or if it is too much for the council to digest since you've had it a week, if you wanted to continue it rather, to a date certain, that would preserve our notice so it wouldn't be further delayed. We could just pick up at that particular date. So with that, Mayor, thank you for indulging me for a couple of minutes. I hope that sets the table for you, and I'm going to turn it over to Katie and Alex.
Katie or Alex?
Alex.
Well,
But both.
okay.
Mayor, members of council, thank you. Just to reiterate, I'm very, very excited to be here tonight and share with you our proposed amendment. And thanks, Christopher, for that introduction. I'm gonna repeat a little bit of what he said, so forgive me for any redundant information. So this is just a brief look at my presentation that I have. So just kind of a little brief overview of how we got here, a discussion of the layout change of the ordinance, the introduction of new districts, development standards. We'll go through some examples, do a brief overview of some additional changes that we found important, go through the public participation, and then we can open it up for questions and discussion. So just a look back, the last time the residential zoning district section was updated was in 2004. And obviously, as Christopher mentioned, a lot has changed. We've seen an influx of PAD requests for 50-foot wide lots and a variety of lots that we currently do not have within the zoning ordinance. And as Christopher mentioned, that is due to different market demands, lot preferences, and so on. So this is the number that we provided at the work session, which is 34 out of 37 of the last rezone cases since January 1st, 2014 were PAD related. I have not updated this number, so I can say that it has increased since then. We did hold the council work session in July, and then for your recommendation, we had a work session with the Planning and Zoning Commission in August as well. So this is a look at the changes to the layout of the amendment. So on the left side, you can see the existing section lists every district as its own section, and then there's two major sections that really establish development standards. And then on the right is the proposed layout of the amendment, which includes a purpose section, which generalizes and combines the purposes of each of these districts, a permitted uses table. So instead of listing everything out and repeating it throughout the old layout, we've combined it into a table, which a lot of cities are moving towards now. And then a development standards for single family, multifamily, some additional regulations that are necessary in a kind of a separate section, such as assisted living homes, animal keeping. Just further clarifications we've added those two sections for single family and multifamily. And then repeated throughout the entire original ordinance was supplemental standards that apply to all districts. So we just combined these all into one simple section. So just looking at this, we wanted to eliminate the repetition and make it more user-friendly. So the new districts that we are proposing is R14, which is a single-family detached 45-foot wide product. The R1A is a single-family attached product, so townhomes, triplexes. And then R1C is a court home product. And then one other district that we are proposing actually deleting is the Agricultural Preservation District. The city currently does not have any land zoned AP at this time, and we don't believe that it will be useful in the future, or that some of our existing districts can't cover the needs that the Agricultural Preservation District provides for. So this is a look at the new development standards table, and I highlighted some of the major changes that I'll speak to. Highlighted the 3 new districts right in the middle. One other major change that I think we didn't discuss at the work session was changing the R16 minimum lot width from 60 feet to 55 feet. With the recommendation to add additional lots and the opportunity to be flexible and provide for further flexibility, which we'll discuss obviously moving forward. We thought that changing that minimum lot width was not a significant change, and also, just to be frank, we'll never get the lot standards right, so we wanted to provide for even more flexibility. So just to clarify, it does not eliminate or affect the use of 60-foot wide lots. These regulations do provide a minimum. So, home builders can create subdivisions with 60-foot wide lots within the R16 district, since they're still meeting the minimum. Similarly, if we use the Lucero community in Estrella as an example, Newland included lots that are 47 feet wide. So had this been an option, they could have utilized the R14 district, since 45 feet is the minimum lot width. One other change is the amendment proposes moving the R2 district into the single-family grouping. This is where the district should have been placed when the ordinance was created, since the R2 district is intended for duplexes. So just to clean up the ordinance, we moved it. And then on that note, I would also like to take the moment to, since I don't have any specific slides related to multifamily residential development standards, those standards were not changed, only the moving of the R2 district. And then moving on with the highlighted sections. The front setback, I highlighted these two because historically we've allowed a 10-foot setback to side turn garages, patios, livable space. So we made this that 10-foot minimum, and then pulled out front-facing garages in order to just hammer in that any front-facing garages need to be 20 feet back from the property line. Another change in the development standards table is that the existing zoning ordinance does not explicitly call out the open space percentages. So these standards were required in the PAD section, but we've added them to this part of the table to make sure it's consistently being used. The one other thing is the maximum building coverage requirements. We've increased those. The recommendation comes from a history of what's been approved in the PADs in the past to create consistency with lot sizes and building setbacks. And I'll just show as an example, oops, sorry, Lainey, can I go back to, thank you. This is what the regulations look like in action. So this is actually a PAD plot plan and within Las Brisas. So we can see the side yard setback. This dashed line shows the building setback requirements. And as we've typically seen in the past, home builders generally don't even build to building coverage maximums. But the ultimate goal and purpose of increasing the lot coverage is to help a homeowner. We've experienced some issues in approving building permits for patio expansions, casita add-ons, and so on, because that lot coverage restriction is so limiting. So where a home builder might have built up to the 45% building coverage, a resident could have added on, but are limited by that percentage. So, and then I did bring an exhibit, or a few exhibits. I got a question about the 55-foot lot products and what that looks like. So I apologize I did not have these in the PowerPoint. So I'll use Elmo for this one. So this is an This is in Palm Valley Phase 1. They are 55-foot wide lots. So this is, we have Litchfield and Palm Valley Boulevard. And then there's the overview of the neighborhood. And then, if I can make this, just kind of some elevations of what that would look like. Let's see. Here's also an example of 42-foot wide lots which are in the cottages at Palm Valley. Just an aerial view of that. So we think we can get these quality neighborhoods since we've already been implementing smaller lot sizes within Goodyear through the PAD process. So before we dive into the lot deviation minimum requirements, I just want to clarify that there are still minimum requirements for subdivisions on all lot sizes. The first minimum requirement is park space. With the proposal, we took the requirements that were recommended in the Parks Master Plan and codified them into the zoning ordinance. So essentially it's requiring 5-acre parks within 40 acres or larger subdivisions to be within a quarter-mile walking distance of each home. And as you saw in the development standards table, we do have that minimum open space requirement, but we're creating those minimums that also align with the Parks Master Plan. So they work together, but the Parks Master Plan is being implemented in a stronger capacity. Similarly, we have the minimum open space requirements, usable open space requirements like shade and tot lots. And we've also kept the unique entry feature to define those developments. And then another thing to note is the design guidelines are not proposed to be changed with this amendment. So our high quality elevations and those things that were adopted in the design guidelines are not changing. So essentially the bulk of the existing minimum requirements remain intact or were strengthened, such as the parks requirements. So now we'll move on to the deviations the flexibility that we're building into the zoning ordinance. And as we discussed in the work session, we're recommending that process for administrative approval of these deviations if additional design elements are provided. And the two deviations are a reduction in the R16 and R14 lot districts by 5 feet. So with that 55 in R16 and 45 in R14, you can go to 50-foot wide and 40-foot wide if you provide the additional requirements. And then the other deviation we're proposing is a reduction of the total both side setback to be reduced to 10 feet. And this was at the request of the home builders, who often include this in their PADs as well. So how this is administered, or how the requirements are administered, are through this table. In the first column, you can see the zoning designation, and then the base minimum lot width that is required. And then one thing to note too is that R14 and R1A and C, we have required additional minimum lot design elements required because these are deviated standard lot sizes. So we do want more from that community that it's being provided. I'll go through some examples and hopefully it'll make more sense. So how this works is if you had a R16 district that's minimum 55-foot wide, and you wanted to make it a 50-foot wide lot product, you would take a look at the table and you'd know I need to provide 1 amenity element, 2 connectivity elements, and 2 streetscape elements. So I'll go through a whole example of a whole scenario of how this works upcoming after I go through each element. And also, we did do some tests on these numbers to make sure it's achievable from the development community and makes sense as an enhanced community itself. And we do believe it can be done. Sometimes it can be a challenge, but it should be a challenge because we are saving the customer time and effort into making the PAD, which could also result in the same requirements. So now let's go through those elements, and then we'll go into an example. The purpose of the amenity, or additional amenity requirements, is to create diverse places within a community that are accessible to surrounding residents. And since smaller lots have less front and backyard space, we need to require additional amenities. So some of these options, so these are some of the options in the bucket that you can choose, or the menu you can choose from. And as I show these, I must put the disclaimer that these aren't the minimum requirements, and we might not get an orange monster as soon as the amendment is adopted, but these amenities would meet the intent of the requirements. And the proposed amendment does prescribe some minimum requirements, but we also leave the opportunity for creativity. And you'll notice, if you look back at the table, the amenity elements do have the, I'm going to scroll back. If we look at the column 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, we did take into consideration that amenities are costly and want to give the home builder the option to have these reductions, but have the options be accessible to them. So taking into consideration the council's requirements for quality and safety neighborhoods, in order to provide for quality neighborhoods, we believe that additional amenities will enhance recreational opportunities through creating community facilities and adding additional park space. And then as far as safety, if we provide additional dedicated recreation space for children and families, we're ultimately keeping that safety within the community. Up next, we have the connectivity element. And the purpose there is to create an inclusive community that promotes a sense of community and provides walkability and bikeability with easy and quick access to nearby amenities.
That's a good one.
And so these are some of those options. This, just to note, this is not the whole list. If you look in the ordinance, there's, I think, about 6 options to choose from. And so one of them is infill development. Benedict Estates was not a PAD, but it was a perfect infill example of existing areas and that empty lot that's been undeveloped. Trail system connections, one thing to note here is that trail connections are required in general by the design guidelines. This is speaking more to as long as you're making publicly accessible trails throughout the neighborhood to provide for that connectivity throughout the community. One other option is smaller blocks. This is an example from Agritopia. The minimum block width that we put in the ordinance is 660 feet wide, and you can see in this example they did 571 in this block, and this provides connectivity throughout the neighborhood without creating long blocks. And then the quality and safety concerns here. The quality, this is consistent with the citizen survey request for increased walking and biking system. And as far as safety, it disperses traffic, reduces volumes in front of homes, and provides route options for emergency response. And the streetscape element, the purpose is to create a sense of place and ensure that smaller lot developments are of high quality. And some of these examples include paving materials, deep recessed garages, detached sidewalks, and open space facing home. And then this one is if you look at the table, this is the most elements required for the districts. So we do have 9 total options that a developer can use. And then the considerations here is elements provide for a sense of place and improves the curb appeal, and the elements require high quality streetscapes, enhancing the public spaces, ultimately keeping people out on the streets, giving that eyes on the street sense of place. So now that we know what the purpose of these sections are, we can go through an example, which should be fresh in your brain, which is the Fulton homes at Estrella Commons. So when when Estrella Commons came in for their PAD amendment, or their PAD in general, they requested a variety of sizes, lot sizes, ranging from 50 to 70 foot wide lots. If the amendment, or if the ordinance amendment was in place today, the district would require 1 amenity element, 2 connectivity elements, and 2 streetscape elements, which is from that table that I showed earlier. So let's see if they could pull it off. So for amenity elements, one of the options is adjacent to a community amenity, and in this case, it is up against the Bullard Wash and provides Fulton Homes is providing direct access to the Bullard Wash within the community. For 2 connectivity elements, the first one is lot diversity. We could credit Estrella Commons for lot diversity and as an infill development, since the area is located within a growth area as defined by the general plan and is located in areas where nearby amenities are already provided, like Walgreens and the subway and QT. And then as far as the lot diversity, 70% of the lots are 50 foot wide and 30% of the lots are 60 feet wide. This also goes above and beyond what the proposed amendment requires, in that 30% of the lots are to exceed the minimum lot width by 5 feet, and they did 10 feet, which is great. For the streetscape element, Fulton Homes is providing porches and courtyards on all lots, and they're also doing paving materials. So ultimately, the rezone of the residential area could have been doable with the new amendment, and possibly could have saved the customer 3 months, roughly. So in addition to the zoning district changes, some minor amendments are being proposed. To start, these regulations are not being changed, they're just being adjusted and cleaned up. For example, in the assisted living homes and assisted living facilities, these items were not distinguished in the existing zoning ordinance, so we added a definition of assisted living facility. In the existing ordinance, there's a definition for adult care facility, which we believe was the intent for the assisted living. So there's just inconsistencies with the definitions and the zoning district section. The definition of home business was expanded on, and in the definitions section, and Article 3 was made more clear as to these home business regulations. We did add definition of animals and distinguish domestic, large, and small animals, which helped clarify the regulations, which are specific to agricultural and agricultural urban districts. The existing zoning ordinance was very messy. So as an example, the agricultural urban district allowed for horse corrals as a permitted use, but didn't allow for horses. So we believe this update is meeting the intent of the city's regulation while providing for a lot more clarity. So although this does regulate the animals in the ag and AU subdivision, that still does give these districts ability to restrict further or put on further restrictions with CC&Rs. As Christopher mentioned, we met with the Development Advisory Forum on September 20th, 2017. We published public hearing notices on September 22nd, and then last Wednesday, the Planning Commission recommended approval of the item. There was one member from the public who attended this meeting and spoke on the item. I think you know him. His name is Pete Tyke. And then, as I mentioned before, there's no changes to the design standards. I believe we did discuss at the work session the opportunity to allow two-story or to eliminate restrictions on two-story homes throughout a community, or putting that restriction of no more than 3 two-story homes on a block. So the zoning ordinance and the design guidelines don't actually prohibit these restrictions. They usually come by stipulation, which are recommended to the council. So with this update, and as the zoning ordinance sits today, we do have the flexibility to make recommendations to council on eliminating these stipulations or adding them, and the council has the decision to add or delete these stipulations. So just as a brief summary, there are the 3 new districts, the deletion of the Agricultural Preservation District, a modification of the R16 minimum, no substantive changes to multifamily regulations, and an update to the definitions. The option to pursue a PAD is still available and will likely still be considered by developers, but we feel that this is a more efficient way to get the results that we want, as well as providing an accessible document with flexibility and transparency. So simple requests like a patio expansion can be easily resolved without having to search through the giant PADs that Christopher brought to the table. This concludes my presentation. I just want to thank you again for your time and dedication to such an important project, since I've been spending the last 8 months working on this. And Katie and I can answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I understand we have 2 speaker cards, so would you like to announce those?
Certainly, Mayor. Jackson Mole.
So each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Please come up, Jackson. The yellow light and buzzer will let you know you have 30 seconds left to speak. You know this. Before you begin to speak, identify yourself by clearly stating for the record your name and address.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. My name is Jackson Mall. I'm the Vice President of Municipal Affairs for the Home Builders Association, 7310 North 16th Street in Phoenix. I'm very excited to be here tonight to support this text amendment. As Mr. Baker mentioned, late last year, we surveyed our members on what are some of the things that Goodyear could do that would make itself more attractive to builders. And the overwhelming response was Goodyear should provide for additional zoning districts that allow for smaller lots. There's a couple reasons for this. First, obviously, you're able to spread development costs over more lots. But more importantly, as Mr. Baker mentioned, this type of product is increasingly popular amongst consumers. And it's important to note that the feedback that we got came not just from builders that are currently building in Goodyear, but from builders that are not currently building in Goodyear. So it's our hope that should the council support this text amendment, that some of those builders will take a second look and say, maybe Goodyear is right for me. So primarily tonight, I just wanted to express my appreciation to staff for taking on this initiative and for taking the stakeholder comments and making revisions where they saw it fit. The version that you have before you tonight, we think will address most of the concerns that the builders had and will be very workable by the builders. Over the course of the past few years, Goodyear has had a number of improvements that have allowed builders to better respond to changing consumer demands and also to move through the process more quickly. And we think this text amendment checks both of those boxes and will be yet another notch in Goodyear's belt. So therefore, we respectfully request your support of this text amendment, and I appreciate your consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Mall. Appreciate it. We had a second card.
We do, Mayor. Pete Tyke.
Hello, Pete.
A little shorter. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, council members. Thank you for letting me come up here. This, to me, was very important. If I could go back a few years to 2004, when she said this had not been amended since. Newland bought into this project 2005. One of the first things they recognized is at that time, the minimum lot size was a 60-foot wide, and when you have 20,000 acres, you're going to need a little bit more diverse offering to all the builders to get through it in less than 100 years or so. So it was just a really great thing when Katie and Alex called me and said, we're working on these additional zoning districts. Do you have an interest in them? And I said, of course. The first thing we did was we contacted Nathan, as Christopher had mentioned, and he got so enthused just because he recognizes the value of Goodyear and the direction it could go, he had his two top salespeople. The three of them jointly or represent Estrella. He had all three of them separate a couple of hours out to come spend the time on this. And he emails me still on occasion, how's it coming? Is there any word? And when's the press release? So he's pretty excited about this. Just as example, we had a builder in, one of the bigger builders in the valley that we're working with on a parcel. We met with them and we were explaining to them the direction Goodyear's going. And for instance, 3 years ago, a PAD amendment would take me 9 to 12 months. We're somewhere in the six-month range. So it means so much to us as a developer to be able to get these to the builder, get them to an engineering and get them built. The way the builder's looking these days is they have a finite time they look. And if it's out past 2 years, they start losing interest. So this is just such a huge help to get this through the process quicker, get us in front of the builders quicker, get the interest quicker. So this is just greatly appreciated. They've done an amazing job, we believe, with it. And the last thing I just want to say is you really do have a great planning department. Christopher, Katie, Alex, Steve, and Karen. I've worked with them for years, and they're just really great people to work with. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other cards?
No, Mayor.
Then I'm going to close the public hearing. Will the city clerk please read resolution number 17-1823 by title only, please?
Adopt resolution number 17-1823, declaring as a public record that certain document filed with the city clerk entitled Updated Article 3-1 and Article 3-2, dated November 8th, 2017.
Thank you very much. Could I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
All right, I have a motion from Vice Mayor Campbell and a second by Councilman Loretano. All right, open for council discussion. Councilman Loretano.
I guess I'll start. Thank you, Alex, for your presentation. That was very well done, so I appreciate that. I support this. I don't really have a lot of questions. I think this is something that's long overdue. One of the first things that Christopher brought up is on your development, your little moniker there was respond. And I think that's important that we have that flexibility. As a city, when someone comes to us with a project, we shouldn't be saying, well, no, that doesn't fit our guidelines. We should say, how can we make it work? If it's a quality project, how can we help with you and work with you to bring that into the city? I know there is a need for the smaller lots. You talk to people who want to downsize. You talk to the millennial generation. We've talked about this a lot. I think there's a great product. Small doesn't mean bad. And I think a lot of people sometimes think, oh, if it's small, it must not be as good. It has to be bigger to be better. I don't think people think that way as much anymore. And I think the consumers have really got to the point that they want more flexibility, especially the next generation, to move with their careers, to do things. With the parks, the other amenities, you don't have to have everything at home. You can, go socialize in those other amenities. So I think this brings around, for Pete Tyke, we'd like a big orange thing in Estrella. That would be really great. So I think there's a lot of positives here. Even when you were talking about the multi 2 stories in a row, I used to be really against that. And then I saw, it was either in Texas or in California, that I saw some that were very well done because the facades, the design elements that you were talking about, Alex, in your presentation were so well done that when you see 2 or 3, maybe multiple, it didn't have that cave effect that I was always worried about. It kind of looked a little urban, a little East Coast with a lot of it looked really well done. So again, I'm up for flexibility. As times change, I think we need to change with it. So I support this 100%, and I want to get that density so we can get those amenities for our residents.
Councilman Osborne?
I'll be happy to go. I do have, if, you know what, why don't you let somebody else go? I'll go last.
All right.
It takes me longer.
Councilman Hampton's going to take this.
Okay. So yeah, I say thank you, Alex, for bringing the presentation and planning team. I'm excited about this too. I think able to save 3 to 4 months is a great lean and a great process improvement for us. So thank you for that. And I'm glad that you went out to the home builders and like with any change that the city's doing, if we're looking at best practices and talking to stakeholders, I think it's always good to see what's going on out there. So thank you for going out and looking as well. So yeah, and to just to echo a little bit what Sherry was talking about with the, I think having the flexibility, the lot sizes is important so we can go real big and we can go small. So there's flexibility in different products. As the market changes, I think it's good to have that flexibility because things will change. So thank you for that too. And then, just be able to be competitive in the market and have those products available to our home builders is good too. And then I saw that you touched on the ag preservation. So this won't limit us to anything like we can still have like an agritopia type concept and things like that, which is good. And those amenities are good as well. So, and that was the only thing. I was going to talk about home businesses, but I think the home business, there was no real differences between the home business criteria, correct? That'd be just a yes or no, it's fine.
Katie, you can take that one.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Hampton. There is one difference in that a home business can now include services by a professional. There was a limitation that said direct services by a professional were not permitted, which meant like a counselor couldn't do counseling services out of their home, or a massage therapist. And what we added in there is that it's allowed as long as you're only serving one client at a time and you don't have like a waiting room.
Parking lot.
Yeah. So that wouldn't, and again, they still have to meet the requirements of no traffic or parking that's above what's normal for a residential home. But this opens up opportunities for more of those small business practitioners to, I can have like a therapy, in my home office, in my home, as long as I meet those other requirements.
Oh, good. So it's more flexible again, not restrictive. So good. I'm glad. I think it's good to open up that possibility for small businesses. So.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you very much.
Excuse me,
I'm good.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you. I am excited to see that you have put in a definition for the assisted living so that we can be sure that we have the right frontage and parking, because that's so important when these companies come into Goodyear and they present these wonderful plans to us. It's nice that we can spell out what we will allow and what we won't allow. I am really grateful to hear from Pete Tykert, because Pete is building in our city, and his endorsement of this weighs heavily with me, because he is one who has believed in Goodyear for years and is actively building every day. So if he thinks it's a good idea, I think it's a good idea. But seriously, everyone wants, not everyone, but so many folks now are looking for the smaller lots. They have other things to do with their time. They don't want to take care of the big yards. And the smaller lots, with the design guidelines we have, the homes will be lovely. And it's not going to take away from the look of Goodyear, but I really think it's going to enhance it. So I'm really excited about it. I hope that we do not wait another 13 years to update it. I'd like to know that our city will be on top of this to take a look every couple of years, because people change, times change, demand changes, and we can't be at the end of the dog's tail and not be changing with it. So thank you so much. I know it's been a lot of work, but it's something that's going to benefit our city greatly.
Councilman Pizzillo?
Mine's more of a kind of couple technical, questions, just so I get a better understanding. What is the percentage of net area? What does that mean?
Mayor, Councilmember Pizzillo.
Take your time.
She can just tell us.
Can I have Elmo, please, Laney? You're talking about the lot coverage that I was explaining?
No. The percentage of the entire development. On the one table here, 3-2-3A, open space is a percentage of net area. What does net area mean? Does it include the drainage, or does it include usable? Does it include everything? Could 90% of it be drainage and 10% of it be open space?
Thank you, Mayor, Council Member. The net area is the gross area minus right-of-way dedications.
Okay.
So that's the acreage we use just to determine what percent is open space. So if there's a 50-acre parcel, and then after you dedicate your right-of-way, you're left with 42 acres, we'd say 10% of that 42 acres.
Is there a percentage that has to be usable open space?
Yes. So what this says is if it's under 40 acres in size, 75% of that has to be usable open space.
Okay.
If it's over 40 acres in size, we go to the Parks Master Plan standard, which says you have to provide a 5-acre neighborhood park for every quarter mile, basically.
Okay. So the difference then, whether it's small lots or big lots, is not put into this. It's just the overall acreage is what the percentage for open space they would have to have then. Available, usable open
Yeah,
space.
the usable, yes. Overall, I mean, the minimum open space is dependent on lot size.
Yeah, one of the questions, I get, and again, I appreciate the flexibility, is when I've walked a lot of Palm Valley Phase 1, some of the biggest complaints I've had was the noise. When they get closer to the walls, the sound kind of travels through, and I assume over the last 10, 15 years, building products have improved, so that's something that's probably addressed, I would assume, in these smaller lots, so that neighbors from one side to the other side aren't hearing what's going on in the next door house. That's probably more for the builder there to see it. Are those things changing, evolving, where that doesn't seem to be so much of an issue now? Whoever wants to try that one.
Christopher, yes, please address that.
That's a good point.
Mayor, Councilman Pizzillo, thank you. The energy rating of homes has increased dramatically over the last 10 years or so. The HERS ratings has really improved as a result of extra insulation, different construction techniques, additional window glazing and things of that nature. There is a corresponding benefit to reducing noise transfer between units as you get closer.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that, because that's what I've usually heard, and I guess Palm Valley Phase 1 has been there for quite a while, so those smaller lots that are back there, that's what I've always heard as far as the noise is concerned. There was one other thing that I had in here, if I can find it here, just give me 1 second. R1A, and let's see, R1A, one of the new ones, and is the amenity elements and the connectivity elements in the streetscape is less than R14, or not 14, yeah, R14. Is there a reason why the smaller lot has less of a requirement than the larger ones, or is it the nature of what that particular happens to be?
Mayor, Councilmember Pizzillo, the R1A and R1C, due to the nature of the unique products like court homes and attached products, we believe that's an additional feature in itself. So that's why we decreased the number of additional amenities in comparison to the R14, which are the smaller lots and a single-family home, not detached or not with a court connecting in that.
Yeah, let's.
Joe, I just kind of whispered. Do you have a photo that you can let him? I don't think he has a court home. What a court home looks like, and
There is a court home in there for sure. And well, one for the R1A is attached, so those are often like row homes, town homes, and so you don't have the same problem with garage dominance as you do.
Okay.
Basically, the lot product has changed significantly. You're not taking a traditional tract home and just trying to fit it on a smaller lot. You've changed the product to meet the lot size. So some of those amenities and elements and streetscape elements aren't quite a concern when you've changed the product so significantly.
That makes sense. That's okay. The question I have then is, as you pick the variety of, it's like a shopping cart. You go down, you have a new R14, and they have to have one of this, two of those, etc. Comes to zoning. Do you typically know what bucket they're picking from at that point in time, or it's approved, and then through the design guidelines or whatever, they tell you at that point what bucket they drop in? And I guess the reason why I ask that question is, when it comes to council for zoning, we won't know what amenities or any of that they're picking unless it's part of the STIP of the zoning. Does that make sense?
Thank you. That absolutely makes sense. What we're thinking is that they will, at zoning, need to tell us what bucket, but maybe not exactly how they're doing it. So they would, at zoning, commit to, we're going to provide additional open space. So we would add a stipulation, okay, if you're going to get your 50-foot wide lots, you have to provide at least 30% more park space than is minimally required. But then when we get to platting, that's when they'd show, okay, here is where the park is and exactly how they're laying it out. But they would have to commit at zoning that we're choosing the adding more park space bucket.
Yeah, and from a council perspective, I think that's important, just so that we know which bucket they're picking from. It doesn't have to be exact, because things can change, and I appreciate that. But we know what that is, because that's the only time we'll have any input of what those enemies, will be. Otherwise, we'll lose that as it makes it through the process. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Councilman Stipp.
I like the whole concept. I particularly appreciate the idea that we're going to, I hate to sound cliche, but we're going to reduce a government regulation and make this a much simpler transaction, and I really appreciate that. The only, I had a sit down with Katie and Alex and Christopher before the meeting to kind of explain this further, and I had two concerns. One I want to share with the council, and then one is a question. The concern that I had was this concept of connectivity and making sure that we aren't just connecting to nothing. If you remember the circumstance that we had several months ago where we had a connectivity to a neighborhood that didn't want to be connected to them, and that connectivity led to nowhere. The other subdivision and the school was walled off, and so the staff reassured that the connectivity has to be purposeful, I think is the word you guys use. So that was the one issue that we talked about. And then the other one, very generically, and Councilmember Osborne happened to be here early, so she sat in, and so I may start the ball rolling. I'm going to kick it to you, but the concept of taking, dropping this down to 50 opens the door for potentially every single home that is built in the city from now on will be built on a 50-foot wide lot. And what will that do to us from a quality perspective and whatnot? And the staff had a suggestion, and I'm going to throw it because this is clearly outside of anything that I even think I know. But I'm going to defer to the former Planning and Zoning Commission member to further elaborate. But I do share that concern, but I think staff has a solution to bring that forward. So let me kick it to Joanne, if I may, Mayor, and then.
All right. Councilman Osborne?
Do you have anything more, or do you want to?
No, I'm.
He's kicking it down.
I'm kind of done with that, so I think the mayor's going to appreciate that I'm going to shut up.
All right. You heard that.
I'll save it for later.
Councilman Osborne.
Thank you. Thank you guys for bringing this to us. And, back in July when all of this was coming to us and I was having heart palpitations, and just a lot of great change, but it's changed, and I suppose that is one of the things when you are the city's old guard, so to speak. 2001 is when I started on planning and zoning. So I've seen a great deal of change in our city, and I've seen where the feeling within the city was, we do not want to go below 60-foot lots and all that kind of thing. I mean, they were doing everything possible not to have, the smaller home areas and things like that. And so, that did not leave flexibility for our city. And I think there was a time that probably, was not good for us. So some of the things what I'm hearing and what I'm excited for is the fact that it allows for clarity of when we do require, what we do require for these smaller home lot. And it allows for you as staff not have to be really negotiating what's going on. It's kind of laying a better parameter for the home builders. It allows the flexibility for what the consumer wants today. And I think we need to be open to that. And we know that not everybody wants the same thing or desires the same thing. And, you know, Councilmember Loretano really described that nicely. For our citizens, this does not lower our standards in quality. This does not lower our standards for design guidelines. You know, there's two different things here. It's a different standard of size of an area, but it's not a difference of design, and I think our citizens would appreciate that. And it really, as a council, it increases the vision that we've had of being developer and builder friendly. I really think that this is really helpful to that. I think some of the questions and the concerns I have are just, you know, it's back to the attention to detail that really it comes with 16 years of experience of being part of this. And so this is where some of my questions come from. Actually, you know, I'll go ahead and address Bill's question first. So over the years, our general plan that our citizens have voted upon and our land use plan that we've all discussed and have played with, it is a strong concern of saying, well, gosh, you know, from here on out, what if it is all 55 to 45 square foot lots? You know, we don't want that of the entirety of our city. So what do we, how do we address that, Katie? And I think that that's something that I would like you to share, because we did have that conversation, what that looks like for the general plan, for land uses. That's something I think we're still going to have to discuss. Is that not correct?
Thank you. Yes, if I can just go ahead and, can I have Elmo? I do want to show you what's in the since you brought this up early, I was able to pull, and I think this is going to work because it worked before, so I'm hoping it works.
There you go.
Yay. Okay. So the issue of diversity, housing diversity, is in our general plan. So for example, in the section where it talks about what kind of neighborhoods we want, you can see here the number one item is a range of housing options. The number one listed item. We also specifically have a goal for a diverse housing stock of high quality housing. So there's definitely policy in the general plan that talks about we need housing diversity. Furthermore, when this is what's in the zoning ordinance that tells staff and the planning commission how we evaluate zoning proposals. And one of the items is the demand for types of uses permitted in relation to the amount of land currently zoned and availability to accommodate that. So basically it's saying we can't, you know, glut the market with one thing. So we do have some tools in place today. If City Council doesn't feel that this is specific enough, you may direct staff to do an amendment to the general plan. And it would be a city-initiated amendment, like we do city-initiated zoning text amendments. And we could add more detail to the general plan talking about what, you know, just providing more clarity. What does housing diversity mean? What's the expectation for diverse housing products in certain areas of the city? So that is the option we thought that council, if so interested, could direct us. That's something that we'd have to evaluate whether it's a major or minor amendment. Either way, it doesn't go to the voters. It would be council's decision. There's just noticing differences and timing differences in those. So you don't have to necessarily give us that direction tonight. You know, you could give that direction to us in the future if that is something you would wish to do, just to provide our customers more clarity.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So on that, I understand what you're saying. Mm-hmm. Let's just use an area of our city that let's say West Goodyear. A lot of landowners, a lot of subdivisions. It puts it back on the councils. I'm taking it, if I'm understanding this correctly, that we would be saying, oh no, how do we know that there's enough or not enough 55 square foot home lots. What does that do legally, Rourke, if you were to say, no, we've stopped? Is there a precedent that's saying, I mean, do we have it aligned enough legally of saying, you know what, no, we're not going to allow that any longer because we think we've hit the ceiling of how many of those lots we should have in our city? I'm just, you know, I know I'm kind of thinking out loud, but I'm just, it's coming to me, so.
You know, I think that creates valid questions given this zoning amendment. Obviously, the most discretion for a council is at the time of zoning. So whether or not you want to approve a zoning on the front end, you might have to stipulate on the front end. But I think you can rely back on, as Katie's highlighted, your general plan. So I think it's something you'll probably have to give it some time and see how it develops. You certainly can come back and make adjustments to the zoning text amendment later if you're seeing that occur out in the community. I think that might be an option.
Okay. I have other questions. Bill, did you want to follow up on any of that?
Go ahead, Bill. No.
Oh, he said no more questions, didn't he?
He said you wanted to.
I didn't have any more, but now, yeah.
Hold off, children. Go ahead, Bill. You got it.
So, when I left the room at 5:45 or 5:30 rather, I was like, we need to do that. But I think the concept of waiting to see how it plays out and do we need to do it, and maybe this is 5 years down the road and we're closer to the actual general plan, or maybe not, adoption. My concern and what I said when I started the thing is I don't want to constrict or hurt a future council by the actions that we take today. You don't know those unintended consequences, but that's what I said. Now, having heard this entire discussion, I think I'm okay with the wait and see approach, especially now that you've given us the information that we didn't have when we were in the room, which was the general plan stuff. So I was ready to write down and make a motion, but I think even based on Rourke's advice, which is wait to see how it plays out, I'm okay with that.
Okay. If I may, can I answer part of your question
please
too? Because
do.
you asked, how do we show this? And the short answer is we'd ask the customer, hey, customer, we have in our general plan a policy that there has to be a wide range of housing options. Customer, in our zoning ordinance, it says we make decisions based on what's the demand for this use. And it's up to them to provide market data, information about the surrounding community to demonstrate that. Staff evaluates that and provides you a recommendation, but then that decision is with you on if you think that they're fulfilling that intent of what that general plan policy is. And if you don't think they are, you can send them back to the drawing board or deny the request.
Okay. All right. And I appreciate these answers as we're going. So a couple more questions. All of this doesn't affect our most southern area of our city, you know, where we really are still rural and in nature. And so that's not tying up, I'm just clarifying, that's not tying up anything that we wouldn't have, you know, the estate type of properties out there, the small ranches or the 100 square foot lots, you know, something that's larger that's not tying that up, correct? I mean, that's still a possibility to have in areas, right?
Thank you. That's absolutely correct. And in fact, there's a lot of areas in our more southern areas where we call that, the general plan calls it more scenic neighborhood, and higher densities aren't permitted unless they did a general plan amendment.
But further south. Anyway.
Further south.
Right, okay. So where does the 60-foot lot fall in? Is that going to be R17? Or is that, I mean, you went from 70 to 55, so where's the 60-foot lie?
There is not a category just for 60. So if you wanted to do 60-foot wide lots, you would zone R16. And then again, that's where council has control. So if there was an area and a developer was committing, I want you to zone this to R16, and although I'm allowed to do 55, I'm promising you I'm going to do 60-foot wide lots. We'd create a stipulation saying you have to do 60-foot wide lots. You know, if that's what council felt was needed to be comfortable approving that zoning.
Okay. So I have about 2 more questions. Back in the day, when 55-foot lots were things that people were asking for, and that was when the whole thing came into play of, okay, well, we'll allow that, but you have to have more amenities, or you have to have, you know, this or that, you know, that give and take came into play. And that started with the 55-foot lot. So if I'm looking at this chart and understanding it correctly, the 55-foot lot doesn't have to do any of these elements, amenity, connectivity, or streetscape. Why the change there? Why not have them have some of these elements? Because that is still a smaller lot size. So help me understand that a little bit.
Thank you. That is a change that we are proposing. So you're right. Basically, what we're saying is a 55-foot wide lot is kind of our base lot. So they have the requirements that all lots have, but not additional requirements that a 50. And we are recommending that based on what we've seen on the housing product type. You can see that product has larger side yard setbacks. So that's one of the reasons we're comfortable not asking for additional requirements. But in the developments that have been approved, they seem to be able to still fit a house on a lot and not have some of these challenges with the garage dominance and excessive driveways and smaller yards. So we're recommending to you that 55 could be that base rather than 60, and that's just from home builder community getting more creative and more innovative in their designs since 10 or 15 years ago, and seeing more demand for this too.
Okay. And I see that the open space percentage is still the 15%. Yes. Okay, last question. And that was back into the detail of the changes, the home business issue, which everything is wonderful. We are opening up, you know, the uses within the home, and that's cool. But something that I read there, and maybe it was taken out because it's placed somewhere else. You said you didn't have to register, or I mean, they still have to have a business license within their home, I thought. So please explain that part.
Thank you. That's a great question. The city code requires business registration of all businesses. So you're right, it's covered elsewhere.
Okay.
And it was that was written before we had a business registration process.
Gotcha.
Where home businesses at the very least had to register with our department. Now that we have the business registration process, they would just follow that, and they don't need to register with the development services department
getting rid of
separately.
redundancy.
Right.
That's the
Yeah. I had a
redundancy,
feeling that was it, but I just had to
great,
make sure.
great catch.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I think the council is done. First of all, I want to thank Jackson Mole. Thank you very much. I think we've had a great partnership with the Home Builders Association. We've been challenged many times by the legislature. We've been challenged by different things, and now we're in kind of a different challenge for council. But you've forgotten one thing. It's driven by the market. It's the buyer. And we have a tendency to think about what we want and what we can stand and what I can't stand. So I understand your hesitancy to trust that this will not get us into a place that you really don't want. I think, again, we were very verbal to staff, and I think that is part of their understanding how the council feels. You have a great example just down the street, which is extremely, extremely successful, and that's Verado. You just have to look there, and that's your example. It's an excellent example. I am really excited about this. You know, this gives a small-town neighborhood feel. in the communities. I like the idea of the connectivity. Yes, we will have developments that have been there for a while object to a bike path connecting. We had that. But why would we let one negative neighborhood, and they were negative about our kids walking on the sidewalks, they were negative about, I mean, their negativity spread like a disease that night. I don't think we need to let that happen. I think we need to when we discover something, then we have the power as a council to bring it back, to halt something, to find out, we don't want to go in that direction. But this is almost United States wide in the housing industry. So it's not like we're picking out Goodyear, Arizona, and we're going to be destructive on this. I don't feel that at all. You have to deal with your feelings and how you like a house to look, and that will always affect how you vote, and you just can't help it. Yeah, you don't wear the same color of clothes I do, or you don't wear the same style I do, but we got a mass group of public out there from all educational backgrounds and economic backgrounds. And we do, the word you said tonight, everybody, was flexible, and I think that was the biggest barrier for this council, was to get to where you could say flexible and not feel like you wanted to, that you felt ill by saying that. You're all really on board for that flexibility. And I think this is going to be a real test to us, but hey, keep an eye on it. When you don't like something, come forth and talk to the staff, and let's see if we can work through it. So, I can almost see that you talked about the little farm area. Remember the community you both came up and gave to us that night? It was so just so palatable. Well, this actually opens doors for that. I want to thank staff, all of you. It's just, we've come a long way. This is advancing Goodyear. So great. I'm voting for this. So, all right. Any other comment? Okay. Let's see where I am, because I always lose where I am. So I'm now going to close the public hearing. Is that right? Have I done that already? Or I'm on?
We're actually in the middle of a vote.
We're on the motion. Okay. Thank you very much. See, I can't talk and run this, and so I get into it. It's one of those things I just don't do well. Okay. So we have a motion, and now we're having a roll call.
A roll call vote. Okay.
Okay.
Councilmember Osborne?
Aye.
Councilmember Pizzillo?
Aye.
Member Loretano?
Aye.
Councilmember Stipp?
Aye.
Councilmember Hampton?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Campbell?
Aye.
Mayor Lord?
Aye.
Motion
Aye.
carries 7-0.
Okay, so this option 2, you have to direct me on that. What do we do about that? Because it's on this. Do we just,
Yes, we're not going to do option 2, but we do still need to do the ordinance.
okay, so, all right. So read the ordinance.
Okay, adopt ordinance number 17-1369, amending Article 1, Administration and Procedures, and Article 2, Definitions, and Article 3, Zoning Districts of the zoning ordinance as amended, providing for corrections, providing for severability, providing for an effective date, and providing for penalties.
Great. Could I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
I've had a motion from Vice Mayor Campbell and a second from Councilman Hampton. Open for council discussion? No discussion? All right. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Pizzillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Loretano?
Aye.
Councilmember Stipp?
Aye.
Councilmember Hampton?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Campbell?
Aye.
Councilmember Osborne?
Aye.
Mayor Lord?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right, I need to ask a technical question of the lawyer. We have a couple of people on the council. We need a break, and I see that we have another, of course, public hearing. Can we take
Council
that?
discretion to take a
All right,
recess if you'd like.
I so deem that. So it's, I'll give you 10 minutes, okay? There you go. Okay, so we're going to continue on business at 7.3 is a public hearing to consider zoning ordinance text amendment, off-street parking and loading. So open the public hearing. Karen Craver, Planner 3, will be presenting. Karen?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. And because I'm sure you're wondering, that map sitting there in front of you is for the next item. The current industrial parking requirements that we are proposing to amend are for manufacturing, assembly, and processing, which require 1 space per 600 square feet of floor area. For warehouses that are 200,000 square feet or less, that require one space per 900 square feet of floor area. And for the larger warehouses and distribution facilities over 200,000 feet, which require one space per 2,000 square feet of floor area. And those current requirements are really based on an outdated theory that as a building gets bigger, that you automatically increase the number of employees proportionally. Today's reality, and we have found this to be the case with REI and Dick's Sporting Goods, is that the larger buildings are larger just because they have more warehouse space, not more employees. And also the businesses are becoming much more automated these days, and again, fewer employees. And our thoughts are kind of ratified by the fact that other Valley cities have already made these changes to their parking requirements. The proposed industrial parking requirement that we are recommending is just one requirement for manufacture, assembly, and processing, and for warehouse or distribution facilities of any size. And the requirement we are proposing is one space per 1,000 square feet for the first 10,000 square feet of floor area, plus one space per 5,000 square feet for the remaining floor area. So as the building gets bigger, you require less parking. And plus one space per 300 square feet of office floor area. And we had never had a separate parking requirement for office in these industrial buildings, and that's really where the people are. We are also proposing an additional allowance for known users. If another Dick's Sporting Goods comes to us, or if another REI comes to us, if they can demonstrate that their operations don't require the amount of parking that our code requires, but they can still show us on their site plan that if a user changes, if somebody moves out and somebody else comes in, if they can show us on their site plan that that parking can be located on the property, and they can demonstrate that they can provide the drainage for it, then they only need to put in what is needed for their immediate use. And the goal of this is to provide maximum opportunity for the industrial businesses coming to the city and hopefully to entice them to come to the city. But we think we're doing it in a way that ensures minimal impacts on adjacent properties. And staff is recommending approval of the staff-initiated zoning ordinance text amendment, and the Planning Commission voted 5-0 to recommend approval as well. So if I could answer any questions, I'd be happy to.
Thank you, Karen. Are there any cards?
No, Mayor.
Okay. Does anyone in the audience would like to speak? Then I'm going to close the public hearing. Would the city clerk please read ordinance number 17-1372 by title only, please?
Adopt ordinance number 17-1372, amending Article 6, off-street parking and loading of the zoning ordinance as amended by amending Article 6.4, 6-4, Section 6-4-1, determination of required spaces to allow a reduction in required parking for a known industrial user under certain circumstances, and by amending Article 6-4, Section 6-4-2, parking requirements to reflect current operations and parking needs of industrial users, providing for corrections, severability, an effective date, and penalties.
Thank you. Could I have a motion?
So moved.
I heard a motion by Councilman Loretano and a second by Councilman Pizzillo. All right, open for council discussion. Anybody? Councilman Osborne?
You know, I appreciate this, and this is certainly a understandable change, and I'm glad that you guys initiated it. The question I have, and I don't know really that it pertains to this, so if it's not, if it could be a follow-up for the city manager to see it later on. I keep getting asked about parking for truck drivers. And so they're usually the owner-operated, and I know that's why I say this really doesn't pertain to this, but it's back into general requirements of parking, and so that's why if we can have maybe a follow-up or something, because I've been asked by owner-operator truck drivers who own these and they have nowhere in the city to park. And then they get in trouble for where they park, or they get tickets, and it keeps going on and on. And so this isn't the place that it's about, but I think I need to have some follow-up on it.
I was trying to get the eye of the lawyer.
Thank you.
We can follow up with that
All right.
in the future.
Thank you.
Councilman Stipp?
I appreciate this coming forward, too. I think that this is really important. It seems as though we waste a lot of valuable real estate on parking. This does not affect retail, though, correct?
Mayor, if I may?
Yes, you may.
Councilman Stipp, yes, this is just in the industrial districts. Yeah, I-1 and I-2 districts.
Is the other project you're working on the retail parking? If not, can we maybe have staff look at that? Other than that, thank you very much.
Councilman Hampton?
I think he answered my question too. So only in the industrial districts, so it wouldn't be like where that CrossFit gym's at or other places like that. They're kind of like warehouses, but they're smaller individual uses, like dialysis centers or those kind of smaller warehouses. I'm thinking off of like Saraville and Bullard and the I-10.
Mayor, if I may. Councilman Hampton, yes, it is just within the industrial zoning districts, and how this came about was with Dick's Sporting Goods and our REI, so that they came to us and said, we don't need this much parking, and so that's where our focus began. And yes, it would occur in other flex industrial facilities like where we are here, if it's zoned industrial. We have not explored changing commercial parking requirements, but
Who knows?
that can always
That's
be done.
right. That's the future.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah. Councilman
Karen,
Campbell?
do you feel if we adopt this, we are in the same ballpark as our sister cities all around the West Valley? Are we within what they're doing?
Mayor, if I may. Vice Mayor Campbell? Yes, I think we are. We researched other cities in the valley to see what their parking requirements were. And we also spoke with our economic development department and said, on the occasion that we're not getting a big user, where are they going? So we specifically targeted those cities to see what their parking requirements are. And so we're bringing ourselves in line with them.
Okay, thank you very much.
Well, I can understand this. Automation has taken over. We have toured so many companies and seen where the worker's been replaced by a machine. So we're right on the right line, and this may happen in other areas too. So your question to me wasn't strange, because that may come up someday, but we'll deal with that when they have the statistics and the needs. So I appreciate you bringing this forward. No other council discussion? All right, could I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Loretano?
Aye.
Councilmember Stipp?
Aye.
Councilmember Hampton?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Campbell?
Aye.
Councilmember Osborne?
Aye.
Councilmember Pizzillo?
Aye.
Mayor Lord?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
All right. The next business item is a public hearing to consider zoning ordinance text amendments, industrial district standards. Open the public hearing. Karen, you're back under the microphone.
Thank you, Mayor. There we go. Oh. Okay. The current industrial district standards that we have for dock doors is the result of another staff-initiated amendment that we did in 2016. And we did that because we were getting inquiries from the industrial business community saying, why can't we have dock doors facing the street? Why can't we have them in the front of our building? And so that amendment allowed loading, delivery, and roll-up dock doors to front on a public street, provided that street was not an arterial and that certain screening requirements were met. Then in March of this year, Goodyear Crossing Industrial Park, which is where Amazon and Macy's are, came through with a PAD amendment to allow the dock doors on Cotton Lane, a scenic arterial. And it was allowed with additional screening required. In our staff-initiated amendment the previous year, we required 2 rows of 24-inch box trees. And with the PAD amendment, because of the scenic arterial designation, we required that that second row be 36-inch box trees, so there'd be more screening right from the onset and better sustainability for the trees themselves. And that amendment also allowed for 65-foot high silos for some of their raw material products to be stored in. And we're finding, again, that this is a normal request that we get from industrial businesses considering coming to the city. Not necessarily the 65, but they have silos that are higher than the buildings. And so we gave some thought to all these things that had happened, and we thought that really these loading dock doors could be on all public streets, provided there wasn't existing or planned residential on the other side of the street, that it only occupied a maximum of 50% of the front of the building facing the street. They'd be screened either by a 2-foot wall with a 6-foot berm or an 8-foot wall, and screened by 2 rows of 24-inch box trees. And again, with the scenic arterials, meant scenic, obviously more landscaping, that second row be 36-inch. Staff has also determined that the silos could be permitted, and we went with 65. That seemed reasonable to us. It is what had been requested by another user, provided they just paint it to match the building and it be located in the side of the rear of the building. And once again, we're trying to provide more opportunity for these industrial businesses in hopes that it will entice them to come to the city. But we also think we've done it with minimal impacts. And staff is recommending approval, and so is the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you, Karen. Are there any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
Would anybody in the audience like to speak? All right, then I'm going to close the public hearing. And will the city clerk please read ordinance number 17-1373 by title only, please?
Adopt ordinance number 17-1373, amending Article 3 zoning districts of the zoning ordinance as amended by amending Article 3-4, Section 3-4-3, industrial district standards to allow loading, delivery, roll-up dock doors, and service in wash bays to front on public streets, and to allow above-ground silos, tanks, and other similar structures to exceed the maximum height limit in the I-1 light industrial and the I-2 general industrial zoning districts under certain circumstances, providing for corrections, severability, and effective date and penalties.
Thank you. Could I have a motion?
Second.
I heard a motion by Vice Mayor Campbell and second by Councilman Councilman Osborne. Corrected that, didn't I? Okay. Open for council discussion. No discussion, then roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Stipp?
Aye.
Councilmember Hampton?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Campbell?
Aye.
Councilmember Osborne?
Aye.
Councilmember Pizzillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Loretano?
Aye.
Mayor Lord?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you very much, Karen. All right, we're at 7.5 on business to consider adopting resolution number 17-1835, accepting a grant award from the Tohono O'odham Nation. Paul Louisi, Fire Chief, to present. Paul?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We're here tonight to accept the grant award or consider accepting the grant award from the Tohono O'odham Nation for the Goodyear Fire Department for a crisis response van. In early summer 2016, the fire department submitted a grant request to fund a crisis response program to the Tohono O'odham Nation. There was a twofold initiative which included a public-private partnership, but also we heard during the budget process last year that there was a desire for us to look for grant funding opportunities. This grant that's provided to us at this point only covers the cost of the vehicle. The proposed project would be a public-private partnership with the Abrazo West Valley Hospital and the City Goodyear Fire Department. The main goal of the crisis response van is to arrive on scene or at the hospital and immediately start providing aid to families during certain types of incidents, such as, but not limited to, drownings, house fires, traumatic injury calls. Basically what the CR van does assist with is dealing with grief after high-stress incidents, contacting the Red Cross, identifying resources such as chaplains, mental health resources, or places to stay for families that have lost their home. providing boxes for belongings after a house fire, providing transportation for children if their parents are injured, caring for the families left behind after a drowning, or providing blankets and water. The CR van would be housed at a fire station and dispatched just like any other fire apparatus for very specific incidents. The CR van would also benefit the police department, or could also benefit the police department and provide support for their crisis victim advocate when necessary. However, to be clear, the crisis victim advocate deals with criminal cases, and that is something that the CR van does not assist with. The crisis advocate also provides for protective orders and also walking victims through the court process. Currently in the automatic aid system, there are only 9 CR vans available system-wide, and oftentimes they're involved in other incidents. Crews can wait up to 40 minutes for the available ones to respond to the scene. The closest CR vans that we have in the West Valley are Surprise and Glendale. Avondale at one point did have a vehicle. However, because of staffing and vehicle costs for their aging vehicle, they opted out of the program. This proposed CR van would be a regional asset and would cover an area essentially from the Loop 101 west to the city of Buckeye, north to Bell Road in Surprise, and then to the southernmost sections of Goodyear. In a data review, we found that there were 537 incidents in 2015 and 529 incidents in 2016, which would have qualified for a CR van response. This is up 65% from 2014 for the same response requirements. The CR van would initially be staffed 12 to 16 hours per day on the largest call volume days. The CR van would be staffed with a volunteer certified EMT and a volunteer counselor or pastoral familiar with dealing with people in time of loss, death, or other traumatic injuries. Best practice and plan for this vehicle would be having the positions filled again with volunteers. A few of these volunteers could come from universities such as Grand Canyon University, ASU, Midwestern University, and also from Estrella Mountain Community College. The EMTs could also come from our cadet program. The CR van would not only improve the care of the patient, but also dramatically improve the quality of care and services to the family who are left at the scene to sort things out and try to figure out what to do next. Not only are these incidents high stress for our crews, but also for the patients' families. It is left devastated, scared, confused, and oftentimes do not have transportation and no idea where to get resources. Additionally, we would also reach out to many local vendors to assist with other costs, such as preventive maintenance of the vehicle, but also for donation of other items such as blanket, boxes, water, and car seats. The remaining cost to upfit the vehicle, so the grant only provides for the purchase of the vehicle, was about $36,000. The remaining cost to upfit the vehicle is $46,900 is what we estimate at today's cost would be. And much of that would be one-time costs. That's the end of my presentation, Mayor. I'm here for any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Are there any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
Would anybody in the audience like to speak? All right, we're going to go on. And will the city clerk please read? Sorry, would you please read the resolution number 17-1835 by title only, please?
Adopt resolution number 17-1835, accepting a $36,000 grant award from the Tohono O'odham Nation for a crisis response ban for the Goodyear Fire Department, authorizing the city manager to execute all documents related to the grant award and authorize a budget transfer for the grant.
Thank you. Could I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
I heard a motion from Councilman Lauritano and a second from, didn't hear who it was.
I think I became the second. Someone over there said first.
All right, you're the second?
I'll be the second.
All right, who did the motion?
Did you? Oh, I thought it was.
All right, see? You heard something I didn't hear. All right, the motion is made by Councilman Pizzillo, and the second was by Councilman Lauritano. Open for council discussion. Councilman Stipp.
Okay, just for everyone's benefit, I sent this pretty extensive list in early. The original question that I had talked about the actual relying on recollection of how this was discussed and what conclusions we came to. And rather than talk about that, I think it's important, maybe an important takeaway is that we develop a better system for documenting those discussions that occur during budget. My recollection of the situation was that we talked about it and decided not to fund it. The chief mentioned that their recollection was we didn't fund it, but said okay to go for grant. And I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm not saying I'm wrong. I'm just saying we probably shouldn't be relying on our collective memories. We should probably have a better system for figuring that out. So that's how this whole thing started. So the first question, and Chief tried to address a number of the questions that I had, but the first question is, how did this, because this is a new program for us, is that not correct?
Correct.
So how did this program score in PBB?
We haven't scored it yet.
So when we initiate a new program, we don't obviously run it through that model.
No, we would. Obviously, the first part of that would be the funding mechanism and for you to accept that. And certainly, the council has the ability to be able to decline the grant award. Right. So if it was approved and we move forward to continue to try to fund this somehow, we would then kind of go through that process of the PBB scoring, priority-based budgeting scoring.
Right. So, which leads to my second question. The grant is only for the van. So now we're really talking about equipment, recruitment of volunteers, training of those volunteers, and cost of ongoing operations. You mentioned that the costs for funding this was $46,900.
Yeah, that's the balance of the cost to upfit the vehicle. So that would include the MCT, the radios, portable radios, lights, paint, any cabinetry inside the vehicle that we would need for them, desktop monitor, business card. So a lot of one-time costs, okay. Not certainly ongoing costs. We estimate potentially to have ongoing costs of between $2,700 and $3,700. Again, trying to figure out all of those costs by working with some of our regional partners. So I did reach out to the Surprise Fire Chief a while ago, and he said roughly that's what they spend per year on an ongoing basis to try to maintain the vehicle.
Okay, so assuming that the ongoing costs are nominal then at $3,700, where did we intend to fund the basically $47,000 for this?
So our idea was to come before council during the budget process with a supplemental request for next year's budget. We anticipate that the vehicle would take a little time to come in, May or June timeframe, and then ask for the balance of the funding through a supplemental request. Again, some of it or most of it being one-time monies.
So I guess I would just say I'm concerned about us approving a receipt of a grant for a vehicle to support a program that we have not funded. That seems to be, and I'm going to say cart before the horse, and I don't mean that with any pun intended, but that's the vehicle. And I realize you're going to say we can't start the program if we don't have the vehicle, but we really shouldn't get the vehicle unless we've got the program. So
yeah, and just to be clear, for council's sake, we did ask for the entire program to be funded through the grant. However, the grant process, they could only fund the vehicle at this time. They appreciated our input, and they liked the idea of the CR van program. They just, at that time, couldn't fund the entire project. So they offered us the money for the vehicle.
Okay.
Just to be clear.
No, that's perfect. Thanks. One of the other questions I asked, which you partially answered, was about the difference between this and the crisis unit at PD.
Correct.
It's really about the service that they provide and the patient, if you will, that
correct,
in which they treat. But the PD has a unit. I'm assuming that is still staffed with full-time employees. If so, how many? What are the?
Could I defer to the police chief? So
I
don't
would
answer that
hope so.
question
I
wrong?
was trying to look in that direction without looking in that
Of
direction.
course, I should have caught that quicker. All right. Chief?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Councilmember Stipp. We have one victim advocate, full-time employee at the PD.
Okay, and I think if I'm not mistaken, it has been one full-time employee for 10 years or more.
Yes, as long as I've been here, it has, yes.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. Chief, thanks, Chief. Chief Louisi, I guess I'd go back to if Avondale stopped providing the service because they had staffing and ongoing cost issues, and I believe the Glendale unit is staffed with full-time employees, is it not?
Yeah, they do have a CR van supervisor coordinator type position. Surprise is not. They have volunteers for both of their seats in that vehicle.
Okay. I guess I want to point that out because it concerns me that we're potentially starting a program that really kind of has this abyss at the end of it. It could go a long time with volunteers, or it could end in a year or less. And we just don't know. And I don't think there's any way to statistically figure out what the answer to that is based on asking people to volunteer.
If I may just to answer
Yes,
that
you may.
question, we do have discussions with Avondale Fire. They said they would be interested in trying to combine some of the volunteers previously from their program with some of our volunteers from our program to hopefully sustain that over a long period of time. The other thing I'll just point to, over the last 3 years, we've actually had a very successful volunteer FPAT program, our Fire Prevention and Assistance Team, which is all volunteer, on low-level inspections for our fire prevention program. So we would model it after that with some of those personnel and try to recruit those same type of mentality and personalities into the program. But as you stated, it is difficult to understand what the length of that program could be.
And I think the work between an FPAT fire prevention
It's different.
person and a crisis response person is dramatically
Absolutely.
different. We worry about burnout, et cetera.
Yep.
So I guess I just want to end with, this is the final part that I have is, my concern is that we are, one, starting a new program with little understanding of the long-range cost implications. We think we're going to go somewhere, but we're not quite sure. The other aspect of that is we are accepting a grant for a program that we have not yet approved, and potentially we may have said no to, but we've requested the grant funding anyway. The second piece is that once we start a community service, it's obviously hard to stop it, and that these teams seem to generally over time turn into either a full-time position because we're using it so often, or they just cease to exist, like the one in Avondale. And my concern is that once we start it, we're not going to be able to stop it. And I think we really have to question whether this is a program that we need to actually initiate, given all of the other things that we are doing with trying to keep the community paramedicine program going, that we're trying to start an ambulance service, that we're increasing the size of our public safety staff, both fire and police. I'm not sure that the timing is right on this. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilman Laurentano?
I have a couple questions on how it would work. I'm more familiar with from working in Phoenix, the one that Phoenix has that's under fire, but they do also assist, like if it's a family of a homicide victim, would that also be something that we would be doing as well? Like if they have crisis needs?
Yeah, so we would try to augment what Christina Bunch from Police Department is doing. We wouldn't certainly take over her role or try to interfere with her role, but be more there of a support mechanism for what she's doing for the families during that piece of time.
And from what you're saying, this would also, like we had a couple house fires in Estrella. This would also help those families that, like I know in Estrella, this would have come in very handy because that family, middle of the night,
they had blessed neighbors that took them in, but I think something like this, they would help these people find housing and shelter and
Yeah.
clothes and something along those lines.
Yeah, so whether they're contacting the American Red Cross or they're really, one of our expectations is they be out creating resources or working resources within the community that would be available to these types of families. If a hotel, for instance, would want to provide a night for somebody in those types of situations, those would be an objective or an expectation for those crews to establish that relationship.
And they would, and just to kind of, I guess where I'm getting so people kind of can see the picture is those relationships. If I'm in a moment of crisis and stress, I may not think to call the Red Cross. I may not know where to go
Correct.
for a hotel. And
Right.
you've got that calming voice. And from working with them, at least the ones at Phoenix Fire, I can't say enough of what good work they did
Yes.
for people and to
Yes.
supplement that. I don't see it as, I guess, I disagree with Councilmember Stipp a little bit on this. I don't see it as we're starting a new program. I see it as we're augmenting and adding to services that we have to help our growing citizens.
Right. Yeah, and certainly looking at the data, we were surprised at the jump in the numbers of calls, from the 320s up to into the 500s, a big jump over the last couple of years. So we're starting to see that need, and it's certainly something that we'll continue to watch, but it's something that we felt like we could provide to the citizens through hopefully the most cost-efficient model we can.
And so I'm going to support this because I think the grant is the first step. I think our buy-in is very little to start, and if we don't have enough volunteers, then we can only do so many hours at a time until we grow the program.
Correct.
I don't think we're going to have problems having people come forward. We have so many people. Just look at the CERT volunteers.
Yep.
I think we've got
Another group.
people who would do this, and I know people that were getting their masters in social work and counseling. They have to get hours. They have to do programs to get those degrees. So there's always people who are willing to do this because this is their passion. So I do support it. I don't think the cost for what we can give back to the community. I think we've had this conversation when we were talking about other things. It's like, what is right? And I just think this is something we can really give back to the community. So I appreciate you bringing this forward because I think this can really make the difference in some of our citizens' lives. So I do fully support this, and we started small, and with our volunteers, if we can't do 12 hours, we do 10 hours.
Right.
So I do appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm sorry, I think you can't. Go ahead, Councilman Hampton.
I just had a quick clarification question. So if we get a grant, maybe a general grant question, but so we get the van and then later down the line we don't use the van for what's intended for, or we decide not to fund the entire program, so just the van sitting there. How does that work? Do we have to give the money back? Or is that
Christine McMurray to come
I'm
up
just
and
curious, just
answer
for
the
my
grant
own
question.
Mayor, Councilmember Hampton, this type of grant is the best possible grant you can get. Tribal money is basically a check, and after 12 months, a report on the progress of your program. After that, you're free and clear to do whatever you need to do with whatever that grant is. I'm going to just throw in a little, probably pat on the back to Chief Louisi, because this same Tohono O'odham Nation gave us a grant in 2013 for electronic patient care reporting. That was 12 tablets. That became, it wasn't a program to start with, but it became a program that took off. And when Chief Louisi received accolades and additional certifications, brought the program to something that had not been achieved in the region at that time, he reported back to the tribe on what a success the program was. That basically builds a relationship, and to some degree, I'd like to think that it did lead to a level of trust in not just awarding the grant, but giving us a vehicle, which is not a common thing for tribes to do. They don't really give vehicles, and I have to say they're a little hesitant on programs too, but because there was this relationship and we took a program that had not existed and became something, I think that trust is what we're being shown here. And so really, to get back to your question, If this doesn't work out, there are no rules in the grant that state that we have to turn the vehicle in, we have to do something different with it, we have to sell it back. It becomes something that becomes the city's fleet and would go through the city's asset process.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. The other question was around, so you said the O&M cost would be $3,500, $3,700 roughly for gas and maintenance?
The ongoing? Yeah, between 2,700 and 3,700. We haven't really weighed all of that out yet, but that's roughly what we're thinking.
And then is there a cost for training? For volunteers?
No, I actually talked to the CR van coordinator for the city of Phoenix, and they said they would get us into their training modules. So it happens like every quarter on a Saturday.
Okay, so it's already into the normal periodicity of the programs that we already have. Okay.
Councilman Pasillo.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Hi, Chief. The couple concerns I have is they're highly technical, the type of volunteers that you're looking for, and I guess a high-stress burnout type of position. And again, you're probably in a better position than I am on there, but I don't see this as a volunteer base going long-term without having burnouts, people dropping, trying to fill it, et cetera, because of the nature of what it is. I could be wrong, and maybe there's a lot of people out there that have no issues with that and they'd volunteer. I also think from a policy standpoint, been nice, and again, I don't recall what the discussion was during the budget. If we agreed on the program, is that if we got X, we would fund Y, and then kind of move forward, because now if we approve this, in essence, what you've done is improved a new program, so to speak, all right, outside the budget realm in which the supplemental will come next year. But what are you going to do, turn down the supplemental after you got the car? That isn't going to happen, right? So, in essence, by doing this, we're approving a supplemental for next budget year. I probably don't have a problem as long as it stays all volunteer. My concern is it's one of that kind of new program creep. You get in there and you get the volunteers, and then down the road, hey, we can't keep the volunteers, so now we need 2 positions to do it. And then I'd have a problem because it's being sold to us as volunteers.
Sure.
Okay, so that's kind of where I am on this program. It's not that the service would help. We've got tons of areas out there to fill. We've got new stations coming on board. We're looking at the paramedicine. We're looking at the ambulance. And again, this is just one more piece on there. So if you can keep it to volunteer, you can probably live with that. But I would hope we wouldn't come back in next budget year and say, hey, I need 2 positions to fill this. Then I probably have a problem.
Yeah, just through our experience and checking with Surprise, and they've had the volunteer program for quite some time. So they've been very fortunate to be able to find that niche population that's willing to do it. And as I stated, the EMT that's on there would be easily filled by our cadets who have to do, they're again volunteers that are looking to become firefighters at some point, but they have hours they have to fulfill every month. So this would be a nice program for them to be able to work in.
Molly?
Thank you. My concerns are similar to Councilmember Pizzillo and Councilmember Stipp. When you sold us the community paramedicine program, we said, and I remember distinctly, as long as you can get grants, we'll continue the program. And we were assured you would be able to get grants. But unfortunately, you could not get grants, and we had to budget it because we had started the program and we didn't want to stop it. This will be a brand new program. When you applied to the Total Odom for the tablets, that was not a program. That's a tool for our firefighters to use for record keeping, just like they use at the hospital. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't a new program, so I didn't have an issue with that one. It was fine. But because this is a new program with volunteers, I just don't want us to have to not be able to, I don't want us to start this program and in a year we can't continue it and it's gone on the wayside. As Councilmember Pizzillo said, your volunteers will be very specific volunteers. It can't be someone off the street because of the trauma you will be dealing with, because it is a crisis. Mm-hmm. And they may have to have additional training. So who's going to pay for that training? How is the money? I remember when you were starting the community paramedicine, you had to figure out the program, and then you had to train, and you had to get a medical director and various people in position to make the program successful. So I see that as well with us having a crisis vehicle. And you just said that it's going to extend all the way to Bell Road. And I mean, it's going to be everywhere. So we won't even have assurances that if we need it in our city, it's going to be available, because it'll be another, quote, automatic aid going to wherever the need is. And I see that. If you do not if you're not able to get the supplies you need for that vehicle at $46,900, I don't know if that's a one-time allocation, because you're going to be needing to refill certain things that you use. And so that's going to be an expense too. Besides the transportation, it's going to be on the city asset file. So, I mean, it's not necessarily a win-win for the city, even though they are giving us a program, but we're going to have to figure out how to sustain it, because we don't want to take it and then not be able to do it. But I thought in our conversation with the budget, we said no to the crisis van, but yes, go please find grant monies, not necessarily for the crisis van, but for other things like paramedicine and that sort of thing. So that's where I am.
Councilman Osborne?
Well, this one's tough because I do understand the need and the desire to want to start this, and the fact that it has seed money. You know, I get that. I think I am bothered that this is coming to us without a full layout of what the program is, because there's obviously a lot of questions here of understanding how it works. And I am in agreement that it is going to, the people to volunteer for this isn't just Joe off the street. It is going to have to be somebody that has, you know, understanding of human, what people are going through. It's one thing to say, let me call, you know, the Red Cross, let me, you know, connect you with this, but it's another when it's going to need to be people that are dealing with someone who's been through a trauma. When do you have to say yes to this grant? I mean, when is the date that you have to give response by, I guess I'm asking?
Mayor, Councilmember Osborne, we are the last city the tribe is waiting on to take this to their board. So we have to provide a response within the next 24 to 48 hours for them to be able to move forward. Because we couldn't get on an earlier council agenda.
I understand. Well, that's tough. I'm stuck. Go ahead.
Did she just say she could not get this item on a council agenda earlier?
Yeah, we did
That
have a
what
hard
she
time
said?
just trying to, making sure that the COAC, the CAR report, the council action report was completed, making sure that we were meeting all the timelines to get this on. And then also because of the strategic planning session, we lost a week there as well, so.
Well, it's,
And we were just recently notified about the award.
okay.
Councilman Loretano?
Okay. I think one thing that we're kind of missing here is how the volunteers are going to come, because I have written grants for victims advocates in crisis. That's something I used to do, so I kind of know where this comes from. And when I supervise different advocates and crisis people, it's a lot of them have to get certain hours to get masters, PhD level. We're not talking Joe off the street. They have to have these hours for psychology, social work, different clinical professions. Some of them would volunteer at Child Help, the family advocacy centers in Glendale, and now that we have them in the West Valley, but that's where they get their hours. I don't think the chief is saying we're just going to take Joe off the street or some normal supervisors. I think we're going to get quality people.
Correct.
That there, and I think you're going to be surprised that there is not really a dearth of qualified volunteers. There's actually quite a few people that are physically looking for those hours and actually trying to get those because this is their career. So this is kind of like what they want to do, and they might be go through ASU, Grand Canyon. I think there's another one in the West Valley, Midwestern.
Midwestern, yeah.
Yeah, it
is
does a
another
lot
one.
too.
Yeah,
So
and GCU as well.
yeah, so I think we have to understand that. I think there's a lot of concern here about the volunteers. I don't see you having any problem getting highly qualified volunteers that are highly educated in these fields and this information. So I just want to put that from my experience. That's what I've seen. I don't think that's going to be a problem. And I understand if you think, the guy that works at the ballpark and does a great job there is going to come work on the crisis. That's not what we're looking for.
Yeah, no.
So I just kind of want to put everyone's mind at rest. I think that's what you're
Yes.
conveying.
Yes.
Chief, is there any additional cost by bringing these volunteers on for insurance or, I mean, they're not going to be a city employee. They're going to be a city volunteer driving a city vehicle. So do we provide car insurance for them?
Well, there would be commercial insurance on the vehicle itself, and then for the passengers.
So how much is that going to cost in addition to what we're paying?
I don't know if that would include an increase in our costs. I could certainly check with risk management and get a number for you guys, so you'd have that information.
Okay.
What's the liability?
Yeah.
I think about the programs and public reaction these days can be brutal for volunteers. That concerns me.
Yeah, I don't think there's as much liability on the volunteers themselves. Again, they are providing more of the resource allocation for the people that are left behind after one of these events. And, typically the crews are caring for the patient, and a lot of times we don't have the resources to direct to the families that are left behind. So this is where the crisis response van comes in. And as I stated previously, we're waiting on average 30, 40 minutes for a crisis response van to become available. So it's definitely an asset that's needed in the region. And that's how we did apply for this grant, was as a regional asset. And certainly as the gaming monies are available, they'd like to see programs that do involve regional collaboration. So that was our approach in the grant application.
Did we ever approach any cities to share this with us?
So
the partner
we have
in
talked.
this?
We have talked with the city of Avondale. They have an interest, but certainly haven't promised money or anything like that.
Okay, but with manpower and
Yes, with manpower. Yes, ma'am.
could you just go over the cost again?
Sure.
The
So
grant is $36,000.
So the grant was provided to the city of Goodyear for $36,000, which will cover the cost of the van. And then for the upfit of the vehicle, which we did, again, include in the actual grant, the original grant, the upfit of the vehicle, total cost would be $46,900. But again, a lot of that is one-time.
That's with the vehicle and filling it in? That's additional.
That's additional, yeah. So the total dollar amount would be just over $82,000. So, and again, a lot of those costs within the vehicle are one-time costs.
Councilman Osborne?
Well, the reason I asked about the timing of having to accept that grant was because I was hoping that we could table this so you could bring us back with a full program report. The process that we're supposed to do when my goodness, just even for something council members want to do, we have a major process that we have to go through. And so that's why this is really throwing us. And it's unfortunate that we only have 48 hours to hash this out. So, Bill, I think you had some questions. I'm struggling. I'm just
Councilman
struggling.
Stipp?
Sorry. The biggest part that I am struggling with is we always talk about we're the policy group. We're the one who talks about public policy. And we are embarking on a discussion about a public policy initiative that says it's okay to bring something to us that hasn't been fully thought through. There's a lot of unknowns, and it's in the middle of the budget cycle. I mean, from a public policy perspective, this makes zero sense. And we can justify in our minds, well, it's only $46,000 more dollars, but how many more $46,000 only dollar programs are we going to do? And as Councilmember Osborne just pointed out, if we have a program that is a direct benefit to our residents that we think it's an ordeal to go through the vetting process for it. And we certainly would not be able to say, well, let us take this and then we'll go ahead and get started. That would never fly. That would not fly if Wally had a great idea but it was only half baked. And I don't mean that to be offensive to the chief or anybody else, but there's so many things that we don't know. And for me, from a public policy perspective, this is a huge mistake. And I understand Christine's, pleading that if we turn this down, that's obviously going to be a punch in the eye to the nation, and they'll think twice about giving us more money. But we still have to do what's right from a public policy perspective. This is the only job we have, is to be public policy people. Sometimes saying no is the right thing.
Councilman Loretano.
I feel like we're doing point counterpoint over here. I get that, and I have to agree with Councilmember Stipp that how this came before us probably didn't come the right way. Okay, I get that, and I think that is over here. But it's here now. So you turn it down, you do look bad to the tribe. I mean, really, you do. You give up $40,000. And we sit here and we tell staff, we want grants, we want grants, we want grants. Well, when sometimes an opportunity knocks, you have to open the door. We have taken other opportunities out of the budget cycle. The White Tanks Mountain, that's not in the city of Goodyear. Estrella Mountains are, but we all voted for that one to fund that. The Veteran Center is not in the city of Goodyear, but it still serves our residents, and we funded that one. So I think we need to look at the picture. Granted, I agree that, like I said, it probably should have come a better way, maybe a work session before or something along those lines. But I think we have a really good opportunity here. And I think we might miss the opportunity. And I don't know, maybe we have funding in the manager's contingency fund, perhaps, that we could fund this with, if that's an opportunity out of the budget cycle. Because I don't think you're going to have this opportunity. And to be blunt without saying, I mean, I look at the emails every day from both of our chiefs, and there's more stuff coming out than there was when I started on council. So that's where I'm at.
I asked the city manager, excuse me, go ahead and answer.
Just for a point of clarification, the idea when we went into the grant program for them to fund the entire program. It was not our intent to come back and say, oh, guess what, surprise. But we were awarded the $36,000, and we had to come forward to council to understand what your desires were. And certainly you have the ability to say no to this.
Brian, would you like to weigh in on
Yes,
this?
Mayor and Council, I appreciate the discussion. This has been quickly put on us with the tribe really extending this to us. So when we were looking at timelines and we're just looking at that, for coming for a council vote, this was the time that was requested to come before you. And what I mean by that is we wanted to make sure also what are the funding mechanisms for this. And you raise a point on city manager's contingency, certainly doable. I would respectfully, though, the reason that we did put it into a consideration for council for a supplemental request is this, I think, goes beyond the manager's purview to fund something like that. Certainly within my authority, but strongly felt that this needed to be before council for us to look for consideration, the supplemental process. The other, looking at the agreement, the tribe did require this to be completed by January 1st. Now, that being said, and with the interaction with the tribe, they are asking us to look at this sooner so they can get it through their tribal council to be done by January 1st. What I might suggest or offer up to council for consideration, if this is something that you want to table, think about a little bit more, timeline's tight, we could certainly ask the tribe if we have any consideration for perhaps a December meeting, and I don't even know if that's possible yet. But if council's not at a point where this is something that you have enough information to vote on, the challenge is what more would you like to have us bring to you so you have that information? And some of it, quite frankly, is unknown when you get to the volunteer side of things. So some of those have been talked about tonight. But council, if you'd like to table it, we can do that, or if you want to go ahead for vote tonight.
Councilman Campbell.
I would just like to remind council that the Totem Odom, as well as the Gila River tribe, every year offers the opportunity for you to apply for a grant. And we have applied to them before for other things that were not funded. So if we were to turn this down, doesn't mean they'll never fund us again, because that's not how they operate. They give a percentage of their earnings from the casinos to the community, and they offer it to all the communities and all the nonprofits. And so I just wanted to say that if we say no, that doesn't mean they'll never give us it again.
Councilman Pizzillo.
As the manager mentioned, for some additional information, what I would really like to know, since it's volunteers, what is our liability? I mean, what kind of insurance is going to be required?
I asked that question.
Because that's numbers. I'm talking cost.
My
I
question.
see some cost associated with those. What kind of liability insurance? Because that's going to be ongoing costs. That's not volunteer. The bodies may be volunteering, but to cover them, to make sure we have the right liability in place in case something goes wrong, that's going to be ongoing. That would be very helpful to know what this cost piece is going to be. And talking to Avondale, because they had the volunteers that didn't work, maybe bring back to us what happened. What caused that to come apart, as part of a discussion. So if you can make it happen where you can squeeze in a timeline and provide some additional information as far as more of a vetted of what the whole program would cost, I think, at least from my perspective, it would be helpful. I think I can appreciate the service. I can appreciate where Councilman Ortiz coming forward, but I don't have all the information that I would like to have from my perspective.
Councilman Osborne.
I think exactly that's where I'm at. I think this needs to be tabled. I think we need more information. I do believe that we are a growing city, that we need the tools in place for what comes before our citizens. And we have tried the community paramedicine, and we're still trying it. That's the whole reason we all discussed this being this continuum of our culture of care within our city. And as we grow, we're growing with it, or we won't even haven't had the fact that we have 3 fire stations coming on board. These are all part of our growing pains. Most of all, just not happy with the process that this is coming forward. So I'm willing, because right now I don't see this passing. So is my guts telling me. So I would have to say we go on the side of tabling it and going for the possibility of going back to the nation and saying, hey, we need to plan this, or plan's not a good word. We need to present some follow-up information for our council so that they, will feel better about this. Or I just don't see it passing. So,
Councilman Siff.
One of the things that if we end up tabling it from a follow-up perspective is I would love to see this, what it scores in PVB. And then the other, because we've got the tool and we might as well use it. The other piece, and I think we would all do this at home, is if we had to spend $100,000 on this program, all said and done, by the time we run it all the way through, would that $100,000 be better spent on the land acquisition for 181? Would the 100,000 be better spent on actually putting up the community paramedicine program instead of this this particular volunteer? I mean, when we put it in the either or kind of category, that might change the way we look at it. I don't doubt the effectiveness of the CR program. I'm just doubting the ability of the city to engage in this for the long term, because once we make this commitment, we're in it. And I'm very concerned about the long-term effect. But PBB will tell us how this ranks in comparison to other programs in the city, and whether it really is something that maybe we should be funding. And that's the whole reason we have spent that PBB money for all these years.
Well, I'm the only one who hasn't spoken, and I am uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable of how it was presented, and the speed it was presented, at the timing it's presented, and the paramedicine, the ambulance, the 2 fire stations. I mean, I'm looking at all those, and so it really is a tough time to make this decision, and I just don't have the confidence tonight to make that decision. So if you want to table it, I'll throw that out there, to table it until it means another meeting. It means getting together somehow. I mean, you'd have to work that out. But as it stands now, I just cannot vote for this, and so leave it to council here.
Table it.
70 bonds.
So do we need to make a motion?
If you feel so.
Make a motion, there we go. Make a motion, you can either do it to a date certain, or you can just make a motion to table indefinitely, and then when we have further information, we can bring it back.
Yeah, there's no use bringing it back on a date that you don't have
Absolutely.
some substance of the information, and that if there's something else that can be added to this program from somewhere else to sustain it, I don't know. And I know you're disappointed about the grant having turned it down, if that happens, but I really can't in all consciousness vote on this tonight. It's just not there. So if you want to, so anybody want a motion to table it?
I'll make a motion to table it.
Did I hear a second? Okay, so do I have to do a roll call, or just Darcy roll call, or just all in favor?
All in favor, and just to clarify, was that indefinitely until we get further information?
Yes.
I think it's over to
That's how I
them.
understood it.
Okay, and they know the timeline, and we'll just have to make that work. Okay, how do I vote? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Oppose?
Aye.
You were the aye. Nay.
I am opposed to tabling it.
Okay.
So that is a nay.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Freaking study.
All right, let's go to 7.6. Is to consider approving a consent order with the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality regarding the city's industrial pretreatment program. Dave Ramirez, Public Works Program Manager, will be presenting. David?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I have a brief presentation starting with some background on the issue, which is the consent order before you tonight. The sewer pretreatment program was established by City Council in March of 2014 to prevent the introduction of pollutants into the sewer system that could cause major disruptions to the wastewater treatment process. The pretreatment program ultimately protects the wastewater treatment process by maintaining the levels of contaminants in the wastewater within the capacity of the treatment facility. The program is entirely centered on wastewater discharges. It is not associated in any way with the city's potable water drinking system. Chapter 12A in the city code covers industrial pretreatment and permitting requirements that apply to industries that operate in the city's sewer service area. The program also includes the fats, oils, and grease, or FOG program, in which the city's pretreatment inspector, who was hired in March of 2014, inspects and monitors program compliance of over 100 restaurants, auto repair businesses, and other businesses that discharge into the city's collection system. Early in the program, we focused on enrolling businesses required to participate in the FOG program. The success of the FOG phase of the pretreatment program generated the need for the inspector to monitor enrolled businesses. In addition, since 2014, 2 industries were issued industrial discharge permits by the city. The issuance of these permits was completed through coordination with the Development Services and Building Safety Permit process. Since the establishment of the program in 2014, the permitting effort has struggled to get response, in some cases from local business industries, and needed resources to consistently work with those industries and also maintain the FOG program. During the budget process of fiscal year 17-18, Public Works requested funding for consultant services to assist staff with the issuance of industrial discharge permits for existing businesses. Funding was approved and provided in this budget year, and in July 2017, the city hired JW Environmental Consulting, LLC, a local firm that specializes in pretreatment regulatory services. John Watson, its president, is in attendance tonight. Okay, regarding the action before you tonight, which is the consent order, during our annual inspection with the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality of the program in March of 2017, ADEQ informed the city that EPA was requiring ADEQ to bring municipalities into compliance with the federal industrial pretreatment requirements. In April, the city received a notice of violation called an NOV from ADEQ, which required the city to inspect, sample, and permit 11 industries within 120 days by August 24th. Through the efforts of staff, all required inspections and all but one of the sampling was completed by August 24th. But due to the technical complexity and extensive customer coordination necessary to permit industrial customers, the requirement to permit 11 industrial businesses could not meet the deadline. I'm going to display something on Elmo. In August, the city submitted to ADEQ.
That's better, thank you.
It's going to be a little difficult to read, but
You can read it.
read it. Good. So in August, the city submitted to ADEQ a summary of the status of the inspection, sampling, and permitting with a timeline to complete the permitting requirements. This is the timeline. It's actually Exhibit A in the consent order. Since the city failed to meet the permitting requirements within the 120-day term of the NOV, ADEQ issued a formal consent order that covered the remaining tasks. In October, the city received the consent order for council review and necessary action. The fully extended consent order will bind the city to complete the sampling and issue the industrial permits by December of 2018, according to the schedule. So there are 3 remaining items in the consent order. Number 1, the city will complete sampling, inspection, and permitting of 11 businesses by December 2018. The current status is all the inspection and sampling has been completed, and 5 of the 11 industries have completed the permitting process, leaving 6 industries yet to be completed. Number 2, the city will complete monthly progress reports and update ADEQ regarding compliance progress, which will include evidence of compliance, including photographs and other supporting documents. Status, ADEQ has approved the format of the city's proposed monthly report, and the first report will be sent to ADEQ this month. And item 3, upon completion of the compliance schedule, the city will certify compliance and ADEQ will terminate the consent order. Status, with the assistance of our consultant and staff, we fully expect that the city will complete all the requirements of the consent order and certify compliance by December 2018. And I'll finish by saying through all of this, in the time that we've been working on this, I would like to note that the city has not identified at any time any impact to the public, the treatment process, or the environment as a result of noncompliance with the pretreatment program. The wastewater process has successfully maintained effluent discharge within required limits. And the recommendation before you tonight is to authorize the city manager to execute the consent order with Arizona Department of Environmental Quality. That's my presentation. You can take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
Would anybody in the audience like to speak? All right, could I have a motion and a second to authorize the city manager to execute the consent order between the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, ADEQ, and the city of Goodyear regarding its industrial pretreatment program? Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I heard a motion by Councilman Stiff and a second by Councilman Pizzillo. Okay, open for council discussion. Yes, Councilman Osborne.
Hi, David. Just for clarification, the top 3 industries, they have an NA of the issue permit. As you go through this process, isn't it true that some of these you find out don't qualify to need a permit in the first place? Is that what the NA is for?
That's correct. These 3 have already been notified through letter that a permit is not required.
Okay.
Although there could still be some requirements in terms of best management practices that they're required to follow and that we will monitor, but not via the permit.
And as we get new companies coming to Goodyear, are we getting a better process as to understanding from the very front that they are going to need these permits, as they move forward in their building of their business? Is that something identified also as a process for that?
That is correct. In fact, Hutamaki is an industry that's just come into the city, and in the process of them going through the development permitting process, it was determined that they do not need a permit. And we're in the midst of developing this letter that will state that and also identify some best management practices that they'll be required to follow that we will monitor.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I just have a question.
Yes. Vice Mayor?
Okay, I just have a couple of questions. You said we hired someone in 2014, and then we've hired now a consultant to help us finish up. And you are saying you believe we will be able to be totally compliant and done with this by December of 2018, right?
Correct.
Which is a year from this December.
Correct.
Okay. I would like to request as a council member that we be notified when this is completed or given updates as it goes through so that we don't find ourselves in this position again.
Yes, we will do so. In fact, under the consent order, we're required to give a monthly update to ADQ, and we will provide the same monthly update through the city manager for council.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay. Are there any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
Oh, I didn't even need to ask if we're going to vote on it. All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, the next business item is to consider adopting Resolution 17-1837, adopting human resources policy updates. Jeannie Rudy, Total Compensation and Organizational Development Manager, will present. That's a long title.
I know it is.
I said today I'd never heard that long title until this morning.
We should be a little bit more formal. I have my shortcuts.
Oh, okay. You have
Well,
to
good
have.
evening, Mayor, Lord, and council members. HR is continually looking at ways for improving policies by implementing best practices and updating them with the most current labor laws. So today I have for you 2 policies that we're recommending changes, and I'd like to review those with you. The first one is Policy 200, Employee Compensation, and the first one is call-out pay. In our current policy, you're required to have left work an hour or more after your shift ends for you to be able to receive call-out pay. What we'd like to do is delete that piece of it, and as soon as you are sent home, if you're called back, you receive call-out pay.
about 50% of our employees who qualify for call-out pay live within the city of Goodyear limits or neighboring cities. And they can drive home, change out of their uniform, and be eating dinner with their family in 30 minutes, and then all of a sudden get called back. Employees who are called out within an hour of being sent home from their normal day, it happens very few times. But for those few that it happens to, we think it's the right thing to do. The impact is very minimal, so there is no substantial budget requirements, and the departments who use call-out pay are able to absorb it within their budget. The second one in Policy 200 is updating bilingual pay to revise it to include all languages, including American Sign Language and other languages as needed. For an employee to qualify for this, they have to use it one or more times a week on average to qualify for the pay. Very little budget impact. As a matter of fact, there's no need at this time, but there has been time in the past. And an example that the chief gave me, because it happens mostly in the police department, is they had a detective who was undercover, and he was dealing with a situation, and he spoke the language that we needed him to speak, but it wasn't Spanish. So he didn't qualify for bilingual pay, and it would have been a perfect time for him to receive this benefit. The next is Policy 600, Attendance and Leave. And in this, it was the passing of Prop 206 that basically required employers to increase their minimum wage and increase it over the next 5 years, and also to pay sick leave to part-time employees, basically requiring employers to provide an hour of sick leave per 30 hours worked. Our sick policy for full-time employees has not been changed except for the definition of family member. That's the only thing that we had to change to meet the requirements of Prop 206. So with that, are there any questions?
Thank you. Are there any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
Would anybody in the audience like to speak? All right, will the city clerk please read resolution number 17-1837 by title only, please?
Adopt resolution number 17-1837, amending Policy 200, Employee Compensation, and Policy 600, Attendance and Leave, as an amendment to the City of Goodyear Policy and Administrative Guidelines Manual of 2/1 of 2004.
Thank you. Could I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All right, a motion from Councilman Loretano and a second from Councilman Stipp. Open for council discussion. Councilman Loretano?
I just have a quick question. For Prop 206, what is the fiscal impact for that change of the law to the city? If
Well,
you know.
it was difficult to calculate since we've had it in place since July 1. I believe we've had very little part-time employees take sick leave. Even though we've posted it, they know it's available, their supervisors have all had training. And so the difficult part is to impact if they're going to call in, and then if they do call in, if someone needs to be called in to cover for their shift. So we tried to calculate that impact, and at this point, it's been difficult.
Would you say it's nominal then?
Yes.
That's right. Okay,
I
because
believe
you
it's
hear
nominal, just
on
because
the
of very
news
little, yes.
what a big impact that is. Thank you.
Councilman Osborne?
Just clarifying on the law itself, so for those part-time people that now are accumulating that sick time, sick pay, is that annual and then you start at zero again, or is this sick pay allowed to accumulate over the years?
So it's allowed to accumulate, and you can accumulate up to 40 hours a year, and then either we have to pay it out to them or allow them to carry it over to the next year, and we've allowed them to carry it over to the next year up to a balance of 80 hours. But the interesting with the law is they still can only use 40 hours a year. So in 2 years period of time, they can have up to 80 hours, but still only use 40 hours in 1 year.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Councilman, Vice Mayor?
For the benefit of the public listening to our voting on this, who would be the employees that would be called back immediately? Just
So-
a sample. I know it's not, is it police officers? Is it firemen?
Mayor Lord, Vice Mayor Campbell. The employees that would be called back, for the most part, are police department employees, public works employees, and are also our streets and traffic.
Very good, thank you. That makes sense, thank you.
Yeah, it does make sense. Any other? All right, let's go to roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Hampton,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Campbell,
Aye.
Councilmember Osborne,
Aye.
Councilmember Pizzillo,
Aye.
Councilmember Loretano,
Aye.
Councilmember Stipp,
Aye.
Mayor Lord.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right, thank you very much. We're now at the end, so does council have any comments or accommodations or reports of places you've been this week? I know you're looking like you want to say it. Go ahead. No, go ahead. I've talked a lot tonight. Why don't you do it? Yeah. All right.
Yeah, this is a quick thing. I went and presented to the Boy Scouts earlier in the week, so that was pretty fun. So the troop that was, I forget their number now, but a lot of good, interesting questions. They have a very dynamic group of young men, so it was good. So, good opportunity.
I know that had to be enjoyable. They're a good group of guys and girls. It's a girl, I'm not sure. Okay, Molly?
We had an outstanding veterans program on Saturday. Park and recreation staff should be commended because they pulled out all the stops. It was wonderful with the coordination. David Sade and his folks, Nathan, Bruce Kesselman, all of them were wonderful. We were honored to have General Brock Leonard, who is the commanding general at Luke, come and be a guest speaker, as well as our mayor. We had children from West Star School and the Desert Edge Choir. They were from Ed Anderson School of Music. It was just a wonderful program and so very well done. And we even had our World War II veteran Joe Bonaberry be there. And we had a wonderful crowd. We had a F-35 flyover at 3:30 that was just awesome. And it was just great. So thanks everyone for all you did to make it so wonderful.
Well, while you're talking about the military, they had the grand opening for the West Valley Military and Veterans Success Center. Very impressive, well done, and it was another coming together of the West Valley, all the cities and other businesses. It's a real honor, I think, that to say that we have continued to support Luke Air Force Base and our veterans. And then I'll go, since I'm talked, I'll go. And then we had, of course, the Mayor Art Select, and it's growing, and we're getting more and more talented young people submitting, and the people that have won awards before are just getting better and better and better, and some of those won, so it was a great evening. Councilman Osborne?
I just wanted to let you all know that we had our 7th grade class that was presented with their award for the Reading Challenge, and that was Miss James' 7th grade class at Western Sky. And the Elevate Trampoline tickets that were donated by Elevate Trampoline was very exciting for the kids, and they also had their pizza party. So they were thrilled. And then we also had at Centera Mirage, the 1st grade class, Leticia Comparana, I can never say that last name, Comparana or something like that. They were very excited about that. And you know, I'm sorry I wasn't with you all for the Veterans Day Saturday, but I still was with veterans, and I was at Nellis Air Force Base with the Thunderbirds and one of our own Goodyear young men that this was his final air show, and he was the line chief. And so it was exciting to be there with all the Thunderbirds. And so I'm so thankful for all of our vets and all of our military, and I'm glad that you guys had a successful day here Saturday.
Any others? All right, then I'm going to adjourn this. Well, wait a minute. I'm sorry. Let's finish up.
Questions?
Yes, I know. All right. City Manager, do you have anything to report?
Mayor, members of the council, it was a great week of recognition for the military and the veterans in so many fronts, and thank you, council, for your comments tonight. And Vice Mayor, to your point, you nailed everything that was there the other day on Saturday, and thank council for being there. We actually had about 600 folks there, so it was a tremendous turnout, and thank you for the recognition for staff. They worked hard on it. I do have a couple of follow-up items, Mayor.
Go ahead.
So follow-up items, we have one that's follow-up on parking for truck drivers. This has to do with the owner-operators, where can they park, what's allowed. So we'll look at what our current ordinances or codes are for that, and then bring that back to council. The other is the consent order with ADQ was talked about, that we will provide updates as we provide those to ADQers at our Department of Environmental Quality. Will provide those to council as well, so you are kept up to speed on that. And certainly on the crisis van, that's one where, as we get information, we'll let you know and we'll bring that back to council. That's all I have.
Thank you. Just, is there any inquiries the council wants for staff? Gary?
I have a question. As it was in the paper that Bill Gates and his group just bought a lot of land up the I-11, and it came out today they're going to build a smart city, like from scratch. I would like to know what if we have a technology plan, what is our technology plan for fiber optics, for solar usage, for charging station for electric cars? Because I know the only charging station going in between here, I mean, there's one going in Buckeye. I don't want to see us miss the boat on this one. So I'd like to know where we are with the technology and how we can kind of make ourselves be a smart city before they build one just a little bit west of us, so we don't get jumped over.
So we could put that as the next future agenda item?
So, Mayor and Councilmember Loretano, if there's an interest of council, again, to others that would like to have that brought before you, we will do that. Otherwise, if you just want information where we're at today, I see the hands raising.
We have it.
Just information, though, or
Are you looking for
Work session.
just? So if I can clarify, a work session would be for policy direction. What we can do is let council know where we're at with our current approach to smart cities. And I don't think it's real deep, but we can bring you up to speed on that.
And as we're talking about those, I think the whole recycling and being smart about everything should be in there too, because that's something that's come up before. I think we need to look where we're going.
All right.
So we'll bring back the information that we can on that. And by the way, what that is actually called, trying to remember the name of it, the Belmont. I want to say Bellevue, and that's in Washington. But that's about the size of a Stray Mountain Ranch. It's about 20,000 acres. So it's a very large facility way out in the avenues, and it's great to see that investment in Arizona. And it looks to be aligned with the I-11 alignment. So.
We're not surprised at that.
No.
Councilman Stiff, do you have something else?
Yes. During the industrial parking, I had inquired about having staff look at changing the requirements for retail parking as well. I'm looking for support for that from council members.
You know, it's
What was that one? I'm sorry.
for retail parking.
Changing the retail parking requirements as well.
It's been very interesting because I remember us discussing that back in 2005, 2007, 2000. So it continually comes up. So
I think when we look at, what's required and what's actually being used are two drastically different things. So, so is there three? I don't know.
So I think enough of them have said yes. They were yes. Joe, you're another one. So that's another one for a work session.
So just to clarify, and Councilmember Stipp, thank you for that. I wasn't sure of what your request was during the dialogue earlier tonight. So just to be specific, it's looking what our current requirements, parking requirements are for retail establishments.
Right.
And also, pardon me? And shrinking them or looking at best practices, but similar to what we did.
At least in confirming what we're doing is correct or isn't correct. I think that's.
Can I add to that?
Yes,
Mayor?
go ahead.
For clarification on that, I mean, you have retail, you have commercial, and you have restaurants, and those are going to be different. So they will have to be defined out. Thank you.
Correct. If it's office versus restaurant versus hard retail, yes, it would have some differences.
Okay,
But we'll do that in a future work session with council.
appreciate it.
At this point, that would be likely after the first, will have to be after the first of the year.
All right, thank you. Pardon me?
One more question.
Go ahead.
So this might be something I can get answered offline, but I know we were talking about the street signs, the new different street sign sizes and things like that, and I was driving home the other day, and I was noticing that, I don't know, maybe, I was just curious about the consistency with some of the streets, like the name of the road didn't necessarily have the symbol of Goodyear on the name of all of them. If it's the bigger one, it has it on the side, and then some of them have the symbol of Goodyear on the street name itself in the green area. I personally like to see more consistency if there's space there with our symbol, that we can have the symbol there throughout, no matter, depending on, doesn't matter what size of street light it is, but it's traffic signal. That's what I mean.
You're getting tired too. So.
Traffic signal.
Okay.
Yeah. So I just noticed. I
Sorry.
just want to highlight that when you're in Goodyear, that you know you're in Goodyear, and it's in the same spot consistently throughout the entire city. And yeah. So and then when I was driving around today on the east side, I noticed some different ways to do some of the signs, make it more artistic accents to it, which kind of was interesting as well. So.
Okay, so the request, if I can, we can follow up you individually.
Yeah.
Because there are, some of those are being transitioned out as we bring new signals on, new signage, those types of things. But we'll follow up with you after this.
Yeah, I noticed some new intersections didn't have our symbol in the green. It was on the side, but I'm just curious. I'm sure there's a lot of history around it. I'm just curious about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We, just to let you know, in future meetings, we have a special meeting, of course, immediately following this regular meeting. Additionally, we have a regular meeting on November 20th at 6 p.m. So I'm going to adjourn this meeting, and then we're going to start our special meeting. This meeting is adjourned.